Chapter 1001. Even though Tai had lost and was injured by Ji Tianxing, he was still spitting blood. However, the more than 3,000 Water Clan warriors had unparalleled respect and worship for Tai. They couldn't accept the fact that Tai was inferior to Ji Tianxing. They all believed that Tai had gone easy on Ji Tianxing, which led to this result. However, only Tai himself knew that he had underestimated Ji Tianxing. When the burning sky palm came, he had already used all his strength to block it, but he was still injured. This could only mean that the burning sky palm was too powerful. Ji Tianxing's strength had exceeded his expectations. He slowly raised his head and looked at Ji Tianxing. He said in a low voice, "Ji Tianxing, good job. I thought I valued you enough, but I still underestimated you. However, I won't hold back. Today, I will defeat you in front of everyone and prove to the world that I am the #1 prince, the #1 genius of the continent." As soon as he finished speaking, Tai held the 9 songs battle halberd with both hands. Golden light surged from his body as he unleashed his strongest strength and used an earth-shattering ultimate move. Wild dragon roars to the 9 heavens. Tai flew into the sky, holding the 9 songs battle halberd with both hands. In an instant, 9 golden dragon shadows descended from the sky and blasted towards Ji Tianxing. The 9 golden dragons were solid and lifelike, as if they were real divine dragons. They were hundreds of meters long, and their bodies were strong and vigorous. With the power to destroy everything, they instantly drowned Ji Tianxing's figure. The arena within 1,000 meters was instantly enveloped by the 9 golden dragons. Ji Tianxing had nowhere to hide. He could only take them head-on. At this critical moment, he didn't hesitate to unleash all his strength. He activated the Kenshin battle robe and turned it into a pair of golden wings that instantly closed. Wings of the Golden Rock. The wide and slender golden wings were like the wings of the Golden Rock. They instantly closed together and protected him tightly. Boom, boom, boom. The 9 golden dragons swooped down from the sky and blasted him fiercely. They drowned his figure and exploded with a loud noise that reverberated through the 9 heavens. The entire martial arts practice field trembled again and again, as if it was about to collapse. The defensive formation protecting the martial arts practice field was also activated to its full power, turning into a dense dark blue light barrier. Fortunately, Tai's all-out attack was ultimately unable to break through the defensive formation. The more than 3,000 people around the arena were dazzled. They erupted into tsunami-like cheers for Tai. In the eyes of the crowd, Tai would definitely be able to defeat Ji Tianxing in one move after using such a world-shaking ultimate technique. However, when the 9 golden dragon silhouettes dissipated and the arena regained its clarity, everyone was dumbfounded. The ground of the arena was filled with cracks and 9 pits. On the other hand, Ji Tianxing stood unscathed on the stage. His white robe was as clean as new, and a pair of golden wings spread out from his back. He was as sacred and dignified as a god. He had actually blocked Tai's ultimate move. Not only were the 3,000 water-kind warriors stunned, but Tai also widened his eyes in shock. His jaw dropped silently. Raging dragon roaring in the sky was one of his proudest ultimate moves. He would rather die than believe that Ji Tianxing could block his ultimate move and come out unscathed. This was simply a miracle. To hell with it. At this moment, the martial arts practice field with more than 3,000 people was completely silent. It was so silent that one could hear their heartbeats. Taking this opportunity, Ji Tianxing counterattacked without hesitation, using his second ultimate move. Lightning. He flew toward Tai in a flash and opened the third eye on his forehead. The azure blue lightning spiritual eye released endless lightning power. It condensed into a 100-meter-long pillar of lightning that was as thick as a water tank and shot toward Tai. This pillar of lightning was formed from the lightning power he had accumulated for 2 months. Even he himself could not accurately predict how powerful it would be. When Tai came back to his senses, the pillar of lightning had already descended from the sky and was about to strike his head. At this critical moment, he did not have time to think. He held the 9-song battle halberd above his head with both hands, dancing with golden light to protect himself. I don't believe that a soul-level superior-grade Dharma treasure can't block your lightning. Tai Yi stood proudly in the arena, holding the halberd with both hands. He looked up at the lightning in the sky with a determined and unyielding expression. Kaboom! The pillar of lightning hit him hard, creating a loud explosion that shook the sky. Instantly, the arena was filled with endless blue lightning, turning into an endless sea of lightning. The 3,000 spectators were also dazed by the loud explosion. Their ears were ringing, and their minds were buzzing. Everyone was stunned. Their hearts tightened as they stared at the arena, praying for Tai Yi in their hearts. Tai Yi, please be safe. You can't lose. His Highness cannot lose. This concerns the dignity of our race and His Highness' reputation. No matter what, he cannot lose to Ji Tianxing. You must believe in His Highness. He is the #1 genius of the continent. He will not lose. After a few breaths, the answer was revealed. The lightning in the sky dissipated. Only then did everyone see that Tai Yi had disappeared. Only Ji Tianxing was left in the arena, along with a 100-meter-long golden dragon. The dragon was vigorous and had 5 dragon claws. Its body was very strong and domineering. Without a doubt, the golden dragon was Tai Yi's true form. He had been beaten so badly by Ji Tianxing that he had been forced to reveal his true form. This meant that Tai Yi had been forced into a corner and had to use all his trump cards and strength. More importantly, a dozen dragon scales had fallen off, leaving a dozen wounds on his body. Each wound was as black as charcoal, and golden dragon blood kept pouring out. There was also black smoke rising from the wounds. They had been struck by lightning. His injuries had worsened, and he looked even more miserable. The hearts of the 3,000 aquatic tribe warriors clenched even tighter. The golden dragon coiled in the sky and looked down at Ji Tianxing. In a deep voice, it said, Ji Tianxing, in 10 years, you are the first person to force me to reveal my true form. I have to admit that you are indeed the #1 genius of the human race. No wonder you are so famous that Divine Master Yu took a fancy to you and taught you personally. Although I appreciate you and admire you, I have to admit that I admire you. For the sake of my reputation and my heart of martial arts, I must defeat you. As soon as he finished speaking, he stretched out a pair of giant dragon claws, opened his mouth, and pounced on Ji Tianxing from the sky. Golden flames ignited all over its body, and golden flames shot out of its mouth, blotting out the sky and earth. Dragon's breath of destruction. Without a doubt, the golden flames that covered the sky were the legendary dragon's breath. Dragon's breath was formed from the life essence of a dragon. It was extremely powerful and could destroy the world. However, using dragon's breath required a great price. It consumed a lot of one's vitality and blood essence. Every time it was used, the dragon's vitality would be greatly damaged, and it would take a long time to recover. Chapter 1002. When the golden flames that blotted out the sky descended from the sky, the more than 3,000 water tribe warriors around the arena were all stunned. Everyone looked at Golden Dragon Tai Yi in shock and disbelief. Everyone knew that the apocalyptic dragon breath was Tai Yi's final trump card. But no one could believe that Tai Yi had been forced into such a corner by Ji Tianxing. Only now did the water tribe martial artists have to accept the truth. Prince Tai Yi, whom they worshipped and revered, was not as good as Ji Tianxing of the human race. At the same time, 2 streaks of light flew out of the palace 1,000 meters away from the arena. They were the Golden Dragon Emperor and the Divine General of the East Woods, Xiao Han. They had been discussing compensation in a secret room. Just as the discussion was about to end, they were awakened by the sounds of fighting in the arena. Realizing that something was wrong, they rushed out of the secret room and flew toward the arena. When the 2 of them flew into the sky, they happened to see Golden Dragon Tai Yi unleash his destructive dragon breath to kill Ji Tianxing. In that instant, Golden Dragon Emperor's expression changed drastically, and a hint of concern appeared in his eyes as he yelled, Tai Yi, stop. He knew the power of the apocalyptic dragon breath. If it hit Ji Tianxing, he would die. But Ji Tianxing was the #1 genius of the human race. He was the realm lord and imperial prince that the emperor highly valued. He was the imperial court's favorite. In order to solve Tai Mo King's rebellion, the imperial court had to compensate the human race with a bay and a lot of resources. If Tai killed Ji Tianxing in front of everyone, the imperial court would be furious. The East Forest's divine general would also demand an exorbitant price. When that happened, the imperial court would have to pay more than just a bay. Even 3 or 5 bays wouldn't be enough. The Golden Dragon Emperor's angry roar shocked all the Water Tribe martial artists. Tai also trembled. But even if Tai wanted to stop, it was too late. The endless apocalyptic dragon breath had already drowned Ji Tianxing's figure. Even the Golden Dragon Emperor couldn't save him in time. Seeing that a tragedy was about to happen, the Golden Dragon Emperor's expression darkened. He was already thinking about how to appease the imperial court's anger. However, Xiao Han's reaction was calm and indifferent. He looked at the arena with a serious expression. He saw the apocalyptic dragon breath envelop Ji Tianxing with his own eyes, but he wasn't worried or angry. Instead, there was a trace of anticipation in his eyes. Golden Dragon Emperor was completely taken aback upon seeing this, and he thought to himself, why is Divine General Wang Lin reacting like this? Not only isn't he worried about Ji Tianxing, but he's also full of anticipation. Could it be that he didn't get along with Ji Tianxing and wanted to see Ji Tianxing killed? Or perhaps, he wants to sacrifice Ji Tianxing to increase the bargaining chip in exchange for greater benefits? At that moment, an earth-shattering apocalyptic dragon breath. The world annihilation dragon breath, which could destroy heaven and earth, engulfed the entire arena and hit Ji Tianxing fiercely. The loud noise reverberated between heaven and earth. Tai hovered in the sky. The golden light around his body dimmed. He was much weaker. It looked down at the arena below and looked at the tumbling dragon's breath of annihilation, as if a heavy burden had been lifted off its shoulders. The Sea Tribe warriors around the arena stared at the arena, waiting for the result to be announced. The Golden Dragon Emperor couldn't help but sigh. Almost everyone was sure that Ji Tianxing would die. Even if he didn't die, he would be severely injured. There was no way he could survive. Only Xiao Han remained calm. He stared at the arena calmly. After all, he was the only one who knew Ji Tianxing's strength. After a while, the overwhelming golden flames dissipated. The arena regained its clarity. The arena floor, which was made of special materials, had been turned into ruins by the apocalyptic dragon breath. It had melted into dark red lava. Everyone stared at the arena, waiting for the final result. However, an inconceivable scene occurred. A handsome young man in a white robe was standing on the arena, unharmed. His expression did not change as he stood in midair, surrounded by several powerful treasures. Above his head was a golden seal the size of a house. It was shining with a dim golden light. On his left was a green tree with thousands of branches and leaves. On his right was an ancient bell as black as ink. These 3 treasures were all soul-level treasures. They surrounded him and helped him block the power of the apocalyptic dragon breath. Ji Tianxing used these 3 soul-level treasures to block the power of the apocalyptic dragon breath. However, the seal of mountains and rivers had consumed more than half of its power. Its light was very dim. It could be seen that Tai's apocalyptic dragon breath was almost as powerful as the attack of a 4th-stage heaven origin realm cultivator. Seeing this scene, everyone was stunned. More than 3,000 Sea Tribe warriors widened their eyes in shock. They couldn't believe it. Tai's dragon eyes widened. He roared in a hoarse voice, "How is this possible? How could you block my ultimate attack?" Even the Golden Dragon Emperor's expression changed. He was shocked. At this moment, he suddenly understood. No wonder Divine General Wang Lin was so calm and collected. Divine General Wang Lin had already predicted this result. While everyone was in a daze, Ji Tianxing waved his hand and put away the 3 soul-level treasures. He looked at Tai with an indifferent expression and said, "Tai, I told you long ago that the outcome is predestined." As he spoke, he took out the golden sword heart. It turned into a giant golden sword that was 100 meters long and slashed at Tai. Sword of Judgment. The indestructible giant golden sword, carrying the sharp sword intent and the power to pierce through everything, arrived in front of Tai in an instant. Tai was shocked. His pupils constricted, and he desperately retreated to dodge. However, the sword of judgment had locked onto his aura. He couldn't dodge no matter what. The Golden Dragon Emperor's expression also changed. He looked worried and clenched his fists. He sensed the power of the sword of judgment and instantly knew that Tai couldn't block it. However, this was a battle between Ji Tianxing and Tai. As the Sea Tribe's imperial emperor, how could he disregard his status and personally stop Ji Tianxing? Boom! With a dull thud, the sword of judgment hit Tai. At that moment, a loud boom shook the heavens. Dazzling golden light filled the entire arena. The arena trembled violently. The defensive formation also swayed wildly, creating layers of ripples. After a long while, the earth-shaking commotion finally stopped. The arena calmed down. The battle was over. Ji Tianxing stood proudly in the air, his white robes fluttering in the wind. He was in high spirits. The golden dragon had disappeared. He transformed back into Tai, lying in a corner of the arena, covered in blood. The jade crown on his head was shattered. His purple robes were tattered. There were several bone-deep wounds on his body that kept bleeding. Chapter 1003. Victory had been decided. Without a doubt, Unity 1 had lost. Even though he wasn't unconscious and could still get up to fight, it was pointless. He'd been severely wounded. He was already heavily injured and his vitality was greatly damaged. He only had about 40% of his combat strength left. Ji Tianxing was completely unscathed. His breathing was steady, and his strength was still intact. Even if Unity 1 refused to admit defeat and continued to fight, he'd only be humiliating himself. How could he do that in front of the 3,000 Water Tribe cultivators, the Golden Dragon Emperor, and the Divine General of Wang Lin? Moreover, he had no deep grudge against Ji Tianxing. This was just a sparring match. It was enough to decide the victor. After panting for a while, he slowly rose to his feet and wiped the blood from his mouth with his sleeve. He stared at Ji Tianxing and said in a low voice, "Ji Tianxing, you've won. I admit that you're worthy of being called the #1 genius of the human race. I'm not as good as you." He was a confident and arrogant person who didn't think much of the other race's geniuses. But now, he had to admit defeat in front of everyone, that he was inferior to Ji Tianxing. How much courage and magnanimity did this require? Everyone understood this, so after hearing Tai Yi's words, they all felt respect for him. Xiao Han nodded and murmured, as expected of the heir to the imperial court of the Water Tribe. He knows when to let go. That's why he doesn't care about the knot in his heart. I only hope that after this challenge, Unity 1 won't hold a grudge. Otherwise, he'd be ruining his own future. The Golden Dragon Emperor nodded, his expression grave. I've always been proud of Unity 1. I've always believed him to be the #1 genius, the pride of my race. Who would have thought that Ji Tianxing would be even more monstrous? As expected of a once-in-a-lifetime genius. Unity 1 didn't lose unjustly. He's become much more open-minded and admitted defeat in front of everyone. Now that he is becoming more and more composed, he has the bearing of an emperor. This emperor can finally be at ease. Though Unity 1 had lost, the Golden Dragon Emperor wasn't angry, nor did he feel humiliated. He had seen Ji Tianxing's strength and admitted that Tai was indeed inferior to Ji Tianxing. In the past, Tai had been too sharp, too confident and arrogant. He only hoped that Tai would be able to learn a lesson from this defeat and become more courageous. In the arena, Tai was also filled with emotions. He was in low spirits as he pondered. Before the fight, Ji Tianxing had advised him not to fight in the ring, but to find a remote place with no one around. Only the two of them would know the outcome of the fight. At that time, he didn't take it to heart and even mocked Ji Tianxing. Now that he thought about it, he finally understood Ji Tianxing's good intentions and realized how ridiculous he was. If he had listened to Ji Tianxing's advice, how could he have ended up like this? How could everyone know about this? He did not blame Ji Tianxing. In fact, he was grateful to Ji Tianxing. After all, Ji Tianxing had given him a chance. He could only blame himself for being too arrogant and not recognizing Ji Tianxing's strength. After this fight, he calmed down the resentment in his heart and untied the knot in his heart. He suddenly felt as if he had put down a burden and relaxed. Phew! Tai let out a long breath and threw away all the distracting thoughts in his heart. He looked at Ji Tianxing with shining eyes and said with a sincere expression, "Ji Tianxing, thank you." Ji Tianxing looked at him calmly and nodded with a smile. He did not say anything. Tai clasped his hands in greeting and said, "What I promised you, I will definitely fulfill." After that, he turned and left the arena, returning to his palace to heal. The warriors of the water tribe around the arena all looked at his back in confusion and whispered to each other. No one understood. Tai had clearly lost to Ji Tianxing. Why did he thank Ji Tianxing? Perhaps only Ji Tianxing, Tai, the Golden Dragon Emperor, and Xiao Han could understand. After Tai left the arena, Ji Tianxing also left the arena under the respectful gazes of the crowd. He flew over to the Golden Dragon Emperor and Xiao Han and greeted them with a salute. "Greetings, Divine General." "Greetings, Your Majesty." "Please forgive us for what happened just now, Your Majesty Dragon Emperor." Just as he was about to explain the situation to the Golden Dragon Emperor, the Golden Dragon Emperor waved a hand and said earnestly, "Ji Tianxing, you don't need to explain yourself to me, and I won't blame you. I am Tai's father, so of course I know his personality. I can also guess the reason for your fight. You defeated him with your strength and ability. Your talent and aptitude are far superior to Tai's. You are the most monstrous genius in the last 1,000 years. Even I am amazed." The Golden Dragon Emperor had such a high opinion of Ji Tianxing that even Xiao Han was surprised. He knew very well that the Golden Dragon Emperor was a supreme expert who had made a name for himself several hundred years ago. His reputation was on par with human emperors. Moreover, the Golden Dragon Emperor was cold and aloof. He had never praised anyone other than Tai. If news of Ji Tianxing receiving such a high evaluation were to spread, it would shock the world. However, Ji Tianxing remained calm. He smiled and cupped his hands. "You flatter me, Your Majesty." The Golden Dragon Emperor nodded slightly. Tai has always been arrogant, cold, and unreasonable. He also looks down on all the geniuses in the world. However, his attitude toward you is very complicated. He clearly views you as a lifelong rival. Now that you fought with him, you fulfilled his wish and dampened his sharpness. Judging from his reaction, it's clear that he's sincerely convinced by you. After this lesson, I believe that he will restrain himself and his martial heart will become even more resolute. If he can calm his heart and cultivate diligently, he won't be far from breaking through to the spirit-refining realm. A genius whose path is smooth sailing cannot bear heavy responsibilities. Setbacks can make people calm, motivate, and grow. In fact, I should be thanking you. At this point, the Golden Dragon Emperor cupped his hands and bowed to Ji Tianxing. Seeing this, the more than 3,000 water tribe cultivators on the training ground were dumbfounded. Xiao Han's eyes widened as he looked at the Golden Dragon Emperor and Ji Tianxing in disbelief. The Golden Dragon Emperor, a supreme nascent divinity cultivator and the monarch of the Water Clan, was actually bowing to a human junior and thanking him? This was simply unheard of. Xiao Han was very sure that when this news spread, it would shake the world. Cultivators of all races would be so shocked that their eyeballs would fall out. At that time, Ji Tianxing's name would spread across the world. Ji Tianxing was also surprised. He hurriedly reached out to support the Golden Dragon Emperor and dissuaded him. "Your Majesty, please don't do this. Please get up." However, the Golden Dragon Emperor insisted on bowing. How could he help him up? The Golden Dragon Emperor's tone was solemn, and his expression was sincere. "Ji Tianxing, I'm not bowing as the Water Tribe's emperor. I'm bowing as Tai's father to thank you. I thank you for defeating Tai. I thank you for stopping his arrogance and allowing him to calm down and cultivate martial arts. I also thank you for allowing him to grow through setbacks and gradually develop the temperament of an emperor. Only then can he succeed me as the emperor. If everything went smoothly for him, his arrogance would have destroyed him. You saved him and saved the Water Tribe from losing a peerless genius and a future emperor. This emperor's bow, you are worthy of it." With that said, the Golden Dragon Emperor bowed deeply with a sincere expression on his face. The more than 3,000 water tribe cultivators around the training grounds saw the Golden Dragon Emperor bow, and they all knelt in unison to pay their respects to Ji Tianxing. "We thank young Master Ji." More than 3,000 people shouted in unison. Their voices were like mountain torrents that reverberated endlessly in the sky. Chapter 1004. After a long while, the crowd finally dispersed. The Golden Dragon Emperor and Xiao Han returned to the secret chamber to discuss the compensation. Ji Tianxing also returned to the Jade Wave courtyard to meditate and cultivate. More than 3,000 water tribe warriors also left the martial arts practice field one after another, scattering in all directions. However, when the crowd left in groups of 3 to 5, they were still whispering to each other about this matter. Sigh. I didn't expect His Highness Tai to lose to Ji Tianxing. It's unbelievable. Yeah, until now, I still can't believe that it's true. Where did that Ji Tianxing come from? How could he be so strong? Didn't you hear what His Highness said? Ji Tianxing is also the imperial prince of the monarch palace, and the #1 genius of the human race. He's even more famous than His Highness in the central province. I thought His Highness Tai was the #1 genius. I didn't expect Ji Tianxing to be even crazier. How can there be such a terrifying genius in this world? He hasn't even reached the spirit refining stage, but he's already so strong. All in all, His Highness Tai didn't lose unjustly. Ji Tianxing is indeed strong. Even His Majesty the Dragon Emperor has to admit it. Many of the martial artists were discussing the battle between Ji Tianxing and Tai. They were both in awe and curious about Ji Tianxing, and they were all asking about his background and achievements. There were also some who were discussing the Golden Dragon Emperor's attitude and reaction. They were very confused. Ji Tianxing defeated His Highness and humiliated His Highness, but His Highness isn't angry at all. Instead, he's thanking him. What's going on? Yeah, not only did His Highness thank Ji Tianxing, but His Majesty the Dragon Emperor also thanked Ji Tianxing and bowed to him. This is simply unprecedented. Ji Tianxing defeated His Highness Tai and humiliated His Highness in public. His Highness and His Majesty the Dragon Emperor are not angry. Instead, they're thanking him. What's going on? What is the background of that Ji Tianxing? Even if he is the Emperor of the human imperial court, Dragon Emperor shouldn't be so polite to him, right? When a guard commander heard the crowd's discussion, he sighed and explained, "You guys don't understand, do you? His Highness Tai was grateful to Ji Tianxing. It must have something to do with martial arts cultivation. His Majesty Dragon Emperor was grateful to Ji Tianxing. It must be because of His Highness Tai. Think about it, His Highness Tai was not discouraged after being defeated. He was very magnanimous and calm. This was not in line with His Highness's previous personality. This means that after His Highness went through a setback, his mentality has changed. He has become calmer and more magnanimous. Only by being flexible can one become a true expert." When everyone heard his words, they suddenly came to a realization. I see. No wonder the Honorable Dragon Emperor wants to thank Ji Tianxing. It turns out that he is grateful to him for training His Highness Tai. His Majesty Dragon Emperor is the Emperor of our race. He actually disregarded his status and bowed to Ji Tianxing to thank him. I didn't expect him to be so thoughtful. The guard commander nodded and said with a complicated expression, "His Majesty Dragon Emperor is a supreme primordial soul stage cultivator. He sees and thinks differently from us. How can we guess his thoughts? His Majesty Dragon Emperor is far-sighted. He must have seen that Ji Tianxing's talent is extraordinary. He will definitely become an overlord in the future. That's why he is treating him like this. If he was an ordinary person, he wouldn't even be recognized by His Majesty Dragon Emperor, let alone be thanked by him." Many martial artists of the Sea tribe nodded in agreement. Everyone was amazed by Ji Tianxing's extraordinary talent and strength. At the same time, they admired the Golden Dragon Emperor's magnanimity. After the martial artists of the Sea tribe left the martial arts practice field, they began to talk about this matter to others. This matter quickly spread throughout the 10,000 Dragons' strange realm and caused a great commotion. 2 days passed quickly. Xiao Han and the Golden Dragon Emperor discussed the matter of compensation. Xiao Han had to leave the East Sea and report back to the human imperial court. The Golden Dragon Emperor personally led many nobles and ministers to escort him out of the 10,000 Dragons' strange realm. Ji Tianxing did not leave with him. He remained in the Jade Wave courtyard, waiting for news from Tai. After a few more days, Tai's injuries gradually recovered. Early in the morning, he personally went to the Jade Wave courtyard to find Ji Tianxing to explain the matter of the boundless stone. After the two met in the study, they exchanged some pleasantries and sat down. Tai took out a map from his spatial ring and placed it on the table in front of Ji Tianxing. He said, "Young Master Ji, I've recovered from my injuries. Today, I'm here to fulfill my promise. In this map, there are 3 locations where my race has discovered boundless stones in the past 1,000 years. According to the speculations of my race's experts, there is a certain pattern to the formation and birth of boundless stones. Moreover, they can only be born in the areas marked on the map. If you go to those areas, you have a high chance of finding boundless stones." "It's that mysterious?" Ji Tianxing raised an eyebrow and hurriedly reached out to take the map. He opened it and saw that there were hundreds of curved lines drawn on the map, forming a strange pattern. At first glance, the map looked like a large sea, but upon closer inspection, it looked like an island. The hundreds of lines outlined the island, and the southeastern area was marked with 3 red dots. The 3 red dots were not far apart from each other, and they were located in 3 different locations. Ji Tianxing immediately understood. He pointed at the map and asked Tai, "I understand. These 3 red dots should be where the experts of the water tribe found boundless stones, right?" Tai nodded. "Correct." Ji Tianxing frowned and asked in confusion, "But where does this map point to? Is it a sea or an island?" Tai revealed a playful smile and said in a low voice, "Young Master Ji, have you heard of the Eastern Sea's return?" "What? The Eastern Sea's return?" Ji Tianxing was stunned, and his face was filled with disbelief. Could this map point to the Eastern Sea's return? "That's right." Tai nodded and said solemnly, "The Eastern Sea's return is the world's most mysterious forbidden land and the most dangerous place. In ancient legends, the Eastern Sea's return is the end of the sea, connecting heaven and earth, and contains the world's greatest secrets. Although it is dangerous, it is also the world's most miraculous place. Not only are there all kinds of incredible and unimaginable scenes, but there are also countless extremely precious resources and treasures that are rarely seen in the world. I have never been to the Eastern Sea's return, but I have read in ancient books that the Eastern Sea's return is endlessly mysterious. There are mountains hanging in the sky, clouds falling, seawater pouring into the sky, the sun sinking to the bottom of the sea, and the moon reflecting the day. In short, yin and yang are in chaos, and the universe is upside down." At this point, Tai's expression was solemn, and his tone was solemn. His eyes were filled with anticipation and yearning. He looked at Ji Tianxing with shining eyes and said in a low voice, "But no matter what, you can only go to the Eastern Sea's return to find boundless stones." Chapter 1005. Ji Tianxing was stunned by Tai's words. "Accompany me to the Eastern Sea's returning ruins?" He frowned and stared at Tai in disbelief. He clearly remembered that Tai had only agreed to give him a map and clues if he lost. He had never agreed to accompany him to search for the boundless stone. After a moment of silence, he asked, "Tai, I'm satisfied that you can give me a map and clues about the boundless stone. As for the adventure in the Eastern Sea's returning ruins to search for the boundless stone, I can go alone. There's no need for you to accompany me." Tai was taken aback, then hurriedly explained, "Young Master Ji, you misunderstand. I'm only accompanying you to the Eastern Sea's returning ruins. I won't accompany you to search for the boundless stone. Although you've heard of the Eastern Sea's returning ruins, you definitely don't know how to get there. The Eastern Sea's returning ruins is to the northeast of the Eastern Sea, very far from my race's imperial court. It'll take at least 2 months to get there. If you go alone, you definitely won't find the entrance to the Eastern Sea's returning ruins. I can only take you there personally. It's actually that far? Ji Tianxing raised his brows and said seriously, then you can't accompany me. You'll waste 4 months on a round trip. Won't that affect your cultivation? Tai frowned and continued to explain, young Master Ji, truth be told, I rushed back to the Eastern Sea from the center state on Imperial Father's orders. In recent months, there's been some trouble at the northern border of the Eastern Sea. I need to personally oversee the situation and stabilize the situation. It just so happens that I'll be heading to the northern border in a few days. I'll pass by the entrance to the Eastern Sea's returning ruins, so I'll take you with me. Ji Tianxing was enlightened and hurriedly nodded. So that's how it is. Thank you very much. As he spoke, he cupped his hands and bowed to Tai in thanks. But inwardly, he was muttering, isn't the northern border of the Eastern Sea the place where the demons and the northern desert meet? Could the trouble at the northern border be related to the demons? But the demons aren't good at swimming, nor do they have any intention of conquering the Eastern Sea. They've always been at peace with the water tribe. Ji Tianxing was full of questions, so he asked Tai, can you tell me if the matter at the northern border is related to the demons? Ever since the Devil Emperor had returned to the northern desert, the Devil tribe had become more and more powerful. They had expanded more and more unscrupulously, invading the territories of other races. Could it be that the fiend race has also started to make a move on the Eastern Sea? Tai neither admitted nor denied it. He said expressionlessly, young Master Ji, this is a matter of the water tribe. There is no need for you to worry about it. I don't know the specific situation right now, so I can't answer your question. Rest well for 2 days and make some preparations. 2 days later, we will set off for the Eastern Sea's sinkhole. Seeing his attitude, Ji Tianxing already knew what was going on, but he didn't ask too much, so he just nodded. Tai cupped his hands and was about to leave. At this moment, Ji Tianxing stretched out his hand to stop him and said seriously, Tai, I came to the Imperial Court of the Water Race this time not only to find the boundless stone, but also for another matter. It wasn't convenient for me to say it before, but now that I think about it, if I don't ask for your guidance now, I'm afraid I won't have another chance. Tai raised his eyebrows and asked calmly, young Master Ji, what do you want to ask? Ji Tianxing explained, Tai, in the Eastern Sea, the millions of water tribes respect the Dragon Tribe, and the Golden Dragon Tribe is the leader of the Dragon Tribe. I want to ask, how many black dragons are there in the Dragon Tribe? Are they in the Imperial Court now? Tai frowned in confusion and asked, why are you asking about this? Ji Tianxing didn't hide it from him and told him the truth. I have a companion. It's a young black dragon, but it was born in the southern continent and has never been to the Eastern Sea. It doesn't know who its parents are, nor can it find its kin or friends, so I want to help it ask around. Hearing this, Tai narrowed his eyes and said gravely, Ji Tianxing, we dragons are born noble above all other races. We dragons will never submit to others, let alone be their mounts or slaves. Originally, according to the rules of our dragon tribe, that black dragon can't follow you and must return to the Eastern Sea. However, since it's willing to follow you, and you're a genius, I won't pursue this matter. Ji Tianxing didn't answer and looked at him expressionlessly, waiting for him to answer. Tai was silent for a moment, then said, to tell you the truth, although the Eastern Sea has millions of water tribes, with tens of thousands of races, the dragon tribe will always be the noblest. There are very few dragons. Other than those who live in seclusion, we only have tens of thousands of flood dragons. Most of the flood dragons are water dragons, ice dragons, fire dragons, and earth dragons. There are very few black dragons, silver dragons, and azure dragons. Our golden dragon tribe is even rarer, so we're called the emperors of the water tribes. Ji Tianxing asked, I've heard about this. Are there any black dragons in the imperial court? Tai nodded. Of course there are. There aren't many black dragons, but they're very strong. I don't know how many black dragons there are outside the imperial court. You'll have to find out for yourself. There are a total of 52 black dragons in the imperial court. Most of them are nobles and guards. If you want to help that little black dragon find its relatives, I can take you to see them. If they're related by blood, they'll sense it when they get close. It'll be easy to identify them. Tai Yi, allow me to thank you on behalf of the little black dragon. Ji Tianxing bowed to Tai Yi with a solemn expression. There's no time to lose. Take me to see those black dragons now. Tai Yi didn't waste any time. He turned and walked out of the study, leaving Jade Wave Courtyard. Not long after, he brought Ji Tianxing back to his palace and entered the discussion hall. He had the guards pass down the order to summon all the black dragons in the imperial court to see him. The guards passed down the order, and Ji Tianxing waited patiently in the hall. He summoned the little black dragon and told it the whole story. When the little black dragon heard the news, it was excited and grateful to Tai Yi. About 15 minutes later, more and more black dragons arrived to meet Tai Yi. These black dragons didn't appear in their flood dragon forms. They were all in human form, tall and powerful men or women. Some were palace guards, some were princes, ministers, and nobles, and some were generals under the imperial court. In short, each black dragon was powerful and had an extraordinary status. This was the first time the little black dragon had seen so many of its kind. It was indescribably excited. Within 2 hours, a total of 52 black dragons came to see Tai Yi and the little black dragon one after another. However, the little black dragon didn't sense any bloodline. Chapter 1006. After the black dragons left, the hall regained its peace. Unity Supreme looked at the little black dragon and asked, "What's wrong? None of these black dragons are related to you by blood?" The little black dragon shook its head in disappointment, its heart heavy. Seeing this, Unity Supreme nodded and said in a low voice, "Young Master Ji, it seems that this little black dragon's parents are not in the imperial court. According to what I know, there aren't many black dragons outside the imperial court. There are only a few, and they are scattered all over the world. If you insist on helping it find its family, it will be as difficult as ascending to the heavens." Ji Tianxing nodded to express his understanding. He consoled the little black dragon, "Little black dragon, don't be discouraged. This is only a black dragon of the imperial court. There will be plenty of time in the future. Let's continue searching. One day, we'll find your parents and family." The little black dragon silently nodded, not saying anything. Ji Tianxing put it back into the pouch and bowed to Unity Supreme. "Unity Supreme, many thanks for your help. I'll take my leave first." Unity Supreme nodded and sent him out of the hall. The little black dragon's search for its family had come to an end for now. They could only slowly search in the future. As for whether or not it could find its family, Ji Tianxing and Unity Supreme both knew that the chances were slim. Ji Tianxing returned to the Jade Wave Courtyard and entered his room. He continued to meditate and accumulate strength. In the past few days, he had obtained an abundant amount of cultivation resources. He cultivated diligently every day, and his cultivation had been rapidly rising. He was not far from the half-step soul refinement realm. In addition, he took some time to check on the situation in the Sword World. Antares City was peaceful and peaceful. The Earth Spirit commoners lived and worked in peace. They prospered and were slowly strengthening their faction. Ji Ku cultivated in the Sword World, and his strength was steadily increasing. Ji Tianxing observed for a long time and gradually realized a problem. The Sword World had mountains and rivers, a sky and earth, and abundant resources. It was very much like a small world. However, there were no birds or beasts in the Sword World, so it was lacking in vitality. As a result, he kept this matter in mind and secretly decided that he would find a chance to capture a few monsters and place them in the Sword World. Unknowingly, 2 days passed. On the morning of the 3rd day, Ji Tianxing left the Green Wave Courtyard and bid farewell to the Golden Dragon Emperor. He then followed Tai Yi out of the imperial court of the water race. Tai Yi was ordered to head to the northern border of the Eastern Sea. Naturally, he was accompanied and escorted by experts. The Golden Dragon Emperor had arranged for a Soul Refinement Realm Guard commander to protect and escort Tai Yi. Coincidentally, this Soul Refinement Realm Guard commander was a black dragon called Long Yuan. After everyone left the 10,000 Dragons Strange Realm, Long Yuan revealed his true form, which was a 200-meter-long black dragon. Carrying Tai and Ji Tianxing, it sped through the waves of the East Sea, heading straight for the northeast. Along the way, Tai and Ji Tianxing stood side by side on the back of the black dragon, gazing at the vast sea before them as they whispered to each other. Ji Tianxing, I've long heard that Yun Yao was captured by the demon emperor. Previously, you said that you were looking for the boundless stone to save someone. After that, I thought about it. You came all the way to the Eastern Sea and risked your life to find the boundless stone. The person you want to save must be Yun Yao, right? Tai turned to look at Ji Tianxing and asked in a deep voice. Ji Tianxing didn't hide it from him. He nodded and said, That's right. I must get the boundless stone to increase my strength. When I'm strong enough, I'll head to the northern desert to save Yun Yao. Tai frowned and said expressionlessly, The demon emperor was a peerless expert 1,000 years ago. His demonic arts were superb, and he was known as the world's #1 demon. It was said that he was born from an ancient demonic seed. Even the legendary Kenshin couldn't kill him completely. He could only suppress him for 1,000 years. The demon emperor is so strong that even a nascent divinity realm expert might not be able to defeat him. You want to barge into the northern desert to save Yun Yao? You're walking into a trap and seeking your own death. If you die in the northern desert, it'll be a loss for the human race. I'll feel sorry for you, and I'll also lose the strongest enemy in my life. Without you as my opponent, I'll be very lonely. Tai's character was arrogant and cold, and he had almost no friends. Although he appreciated Ji Tianxing and wanted to make friends with Ji Tianxing, he was not good at talking. However, he was not good with words and would not dissuade Ji Tianxing like a friend. Ji Tianxing looked at the sea expressionlessly. His eyes were firm, and he said in a deep voice, In your opinion, with my strength, it's impossible to save Yun Yao. What I'm doing is tantamount to suicide. Maybe you think it's stupid. That's right. Tai nodded. Ji Tianxing smiled and said in a complicated and deep voice, But you don't understand at all. There are many things in the world that can't be measured by right or wrong, life or death. Some things, even if you know it's wrong, you have to do it. Even if there's a mountain of knives and a sea of fire in front of you, you have to step in. Love is harmful, Tai said expressionlessly. Tai said expressionlessly, I didn't expect that a genius like you would be trapped by love and die because of love. Ji Tianxing glanced at him, frowned and said, Shut up. I haven't gone to the northern desert yet, and you're already cursing me? Tai looked at him indifferently and said in a calm voice, The ending is already decided. As long as you step into the northern desert, you won't be able to return. Ha! Ji Tianxing sneered and said in a playful tone, Then we might as well make a bet. Bet on what? Tai turned to look at him, showing a trace of interest. Ji Tianxing looked at the sea in front of him and said in a deep voice, I will definitely go to the northern desert. If I succeed in saving Yun Yao and leave the northern desert alive, you lose. You have to be my guard for a year. Tai raised his eyebrows and said in a cold voice, You're very vengeful. Ji Tianxing smiled and said in a playful tone, Didn't you come up with this idea? Do you dare to accept it? Why not? Tai frowned and asked in a deep voice, What if you lose? Ji Tianxing couldn't help laughing and said in a playful tone, If I lose, I won't be able to come back alive. By that time, I will be dead in the northern desert. What else do you want? Tai was silent. He stared at the sea with burning eyes. After thinking for a long time, he turned to look at Ji Tianxing. I'll make the bet with you, but I hope you can come back alive. Ji Tianxing showed a playful smile. So, you really want to be my guard? Tai glanced at him expressionlessly and didn't say a word. Ji Tianxing stopped talking about it and changed the topic. He said in a resentful tone, Actually, not only will I save Yun Yao, but I will also find a way to kill the Demon King. The Demon King has brought disaster to the human world, wantonly killing people of the human race and the demon race. I don't know how many people he has killed. No matter what, I will do whatever it takes to get rid of him. Tai squinted at him and said in an indifferent tone, How ignorant. What does the life and death of people of the human race and the demon race have to do with you? If I were you, I wouldn't care about the life and death of people, and I wouldn't provoke the Demon King. That's courting death. Instead of doing it for those irrelevant people, I'd rather pursue the peak of martial arts, improve my strength, and explore the realm above primordial divinity. Ji Tianxing shook his head gently and said in a serious tone, I'm not you. I can't be as independent as you, ignoring the life and death of others. Tai said expressionlessly, how can someone like you maintain a sincere heart of martial arts when you are entangled by all kinds of worldly affairs and bound by emotions and grudges? Ji Tianxing shook his head again and sighed in a complicated tone. A person should live with principles and emotions. He can't live only for himself, and he can't live only for martial arts. Chapter 1007. Ji Tianxing and Tai had different views and styles, so they were destined to be unable to become good friends. However, neither of them could convince the other. Neither of them would change their minds, much less force it. Thus, after the first day of conversation, the two of them stopped talking. They sat on the black dragon's back and cultivated. The black dragon commander, Long Yuan, sped across the sea without saying a word. 2 days later, the little black dragon jumped out of the 100 treasures brocade pouch and landed on its back. The little black dragon was a young black dragon. It was only at the 2nd level of the heaven origin realm. Its cultivation was shallow, and it lacked cultivation experience. The black dragon commander, Long Yuan, was an adult dragon that had lived for more than 800 years. It had the strength of the soul refinement realm, and it had abundant cultivation and combat experience. The little black dragon chatted with it for a while. After understanding this, it was very respectful and asked for guidance on various cultivation methods. The black dragon race was very few in number, so they had a deeper relationship with each other. Long Yuan heard about the little black dragon's deeds and sympathized with it. It also wanted to persuade it to return to the imperial court and live with the other black dragons. Thus, Long Yuan constantly imparted cultivation experience to the little black dragon along the way, and also taught it various combat techniques. In addition, Long Yuan also told it many stories and legends of the black dragon race. The little black dragon learned a lot and was greatly enlightened. It also gained a better understanding of the black dragon race. 10 days later, Long Yuan imparted all the experience it could teach. Thus, after thanking Long Yuan, it returned to the 100 treasures brocade pouch and entered seclusion to cultivate. The cultivation and combat experience that Long Yuan imparted to it was incomparably precious. It was enough for it to use for many years and cultivate to the soul refinement realm. It was confident that it would be twice the result with half the effort in the future, and its strength would increase even more rapidly. Unknowingly, 50 days passed. In such a long period of time, Long Yuan sped across the East Sea without encountering any danger. After all, it did not conceal its aura. Although there were all kinds of powerful monsters and sea beasts along the way, they were all afraid of its powerful dragon might. They all fled, not daring to approach. On the evening of the 51st day, Long Yuan carried Ji Tianxing and Tai across half of the East Sea and finally arrived near the sinkhole. What was strange was that Ji Tianxing only saw turbulent waves on the surface of the sea. However, the surface of the sea here was abnormally calm, like the surface of a lake with ripples, sparkling under the reflection of the setting sun. 100 miles ahead, there were 2 huge black shadows floating quietly on the sea surface. From a distance, Ji Tianxing could not see what the 2 blurry shadows were. However, he could vaguely guess that it might be 2 islands. The dragon abyss gradually came to a stop. The huge flood dragon body floated above the surface of the sea. Tai finished his meditation and stood up to look ahead. When he saw the 2 black shadows, he said to Ji Tianxing, "Mr. Ji, we have arrived." The 2 tall mountains ahead were the entrance to the East Sea's sinkhole. This is the end of the East Sea, and also the boundary between heaven and earth. Once you cross the entrance, you will be able to enter the East Sea's sinkhole. This monarch can only send you to this point. Let's part ways here. We'll meet again someday. With that, Tai cupped his hands at Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing cupped his hands in return and said with a solemn expression, "Tai, thank you for your help. I will remember this favor." Also, you must remember our bet. When I return from the northern desert, I will look for you." Tai Yi only nodded and did not say anything. However, he thought to himself, if we meet again, why wait until then? However, he only thought this in his heart and did not say it out loud. He waved at Ji Tianxing and quickly left on Longyuan. Ji Tianxing stood above the sea surface and watched Longyuan and Tai Yi's figures disappear into the horizon. Only then did he turn and fly toward the East Sea's sinkhole. Soon, he arrived at the entrance to the East Sea's sinkhole. When he got closer, he realized that the two huge black shadows were indeed not islands, but two mountains. Two lonely black mountain peaks stood quietly on the sea surface, revealing a mottled aura of vicissitudes. The mountain peaks were 1,000 meters tall and were pitch black like reefs. Not a single blade of grass could be seen. It was cold and dead. Strangely, the two mountain peaks floated above the sea surface, supported by some unknown force. No matter how the wind and rain blew, they did not move at all. The two mountain peaks were separated by 5 kilometers, like a gate. The sea surface inside the gate was blocked by a thin layer of fog, making it impossible to see what was inside. The sea surface in that area was as calm as a mirror. Standing between the two mountain peaks, Ji Tianxing could feel a mysterious and cold aura blowing against his face. The legendary East Sea's sinkhole, here I come. He muttered in his heart. In a flash, he passed through the sea surface between the two mountain peaks and flew into the East Sea's sinkhole. He passed through the fog that covered the sky and kept entering the East Sea's sinkhole. When the evening sun shone down, it could only reflect the dense fog in the sky and not the surface of the sea. Ji Tianxing flew above the sea surface. The surroundings were dark and quiet. Not long after, he really entered the East Sea's sinkhole. On the surrounding sea surface, some scattered islands began to appear. There were also some huge reefs that poked out of the sea surface. At first glance, this sea area looked like a shallow sea area. The sea water did not seem deep. However, after Ji Tianxing used his spiritual perception to investigate, he realized that those small islands that were only 1,000 meters in circumference were actually the peaks of huge mountains. The huge mountains were almost completely submerged by the sea. Only a little of the peaks were exposed, forming the islands. And the reefs that poked out of the water were actually connected to the peaks below, extending into the depths of the sea. Ji Tianxing's spiritual perception could only detect a radius of 2,000 meters. It could not reach the bottom of the sea. And in the quiet deep sea, there were no fish or water creatures. It was like a dead sea. As he flew into the depths of the sinkhole, he took out a map from his interspatial ring. The map that Tai Yi gave him was actually a simple one. It only drew half of the sinkhole. However, he came to the sinkhole this time to find the boundless stone, not to explore the secrets of the sinkhole. Therefore, he would not enter the depths of the sinkhole. Half a map was enough. He took the map and compared it with the surrounding situation. After flying for hundreds of miles, he finally understood the map and figured out his location. Following that, he adjusted his direction and flew straight to the southeast of the sinkhole. There were 3 red dots on the map. They represented the place where the boundless stone had appeared. It was in the southeast of the sinkhole. According to his estimation, he would have to travel continuously for about 10 days before reaching that sea area. Chapter 1008. Ji Tianxing was riding on the little black dragon as he sped across the surface of the sea. After the little black dragon had flown more than 5,000 li, more and more islands appeared on the surface of the sea. At the same time, Ji Tianxing could faintly smell danger, as well as the chill of death. Up ahead was a black island 1,000 meters in circumference. It silently stood on the surface of the sea, appearing completely unremarkable. This island was the same as the other islands around it. It was made of black reefs, and not a single leaf grew on it. It was pitch black like ink and exuded an icy aura. Ji Tianxing paid it no mind. The little black dragon flew across the sky, intending to cross that island. However, just as the little black dragon was flying directly above the island, a sudden change occurred. The originally motionless island trembled a few times, and then it began to shine with a cold, pitch-black light. From that pitch-black island, a massive head the size of a palace emerged. It stretched out a thick neck that was several hundred meters long and bit at the little black dragon. The flat and black head was like the head of a python. It opened its bloody maw and bit at the little black dragon's waist. At this critical moment, the little black dragon subconsciously twisted its body in an attempt to dodge the attack. However, its speed was still too slow. It barely managed to dodge the bite from the bloody mouth but was still sent flying. Boom! There was a deafening thud as the little black dragon was sent flying back, tumbling toward the surface of the sea 10 li away. Xianxia had already flown into the sky, his body surging with golden light as he looked down at that massive beast with murderous intent. At this moment he finally saw clearly that it wasn't an island at all, but a black tortoise that was enormous like a mountain. The black tortoise was as black as ink. It floated motionlessly on the surface of the sea, its neck and head tucked into its shell. It looked just like a pitch-black island. In particular, its shell was 1,000 meters in circumference, and its surface was covered with many reefs. It looked mottled and weathered, no different from a real island. Most importantly, it was born with a special innate ability called turtle breath. This kind of talent allowed it to completely hide its power and life aura, just like a cold stone. Xianxia stared at it coldly and muttered in a low voice, "Damn old tortoise, you're so cunning. Your disguise is so good that even I was fooled." However, he was able to discern that this black tortoise wasn't an ordinary sea beast, and it was a 10,000-year-old black tortoise that possessed a strength at the 5th level of the soul refinement stage. As everyone knows, the black tortoise likes to be quiet and doesn't like to move. It loves to sleep deeply and often sleeps for hundreds of years. When it slept, it would disguise itself as an island and float on the surface of the sea. If there was prey passing by, it would suddenly attack and often successfully capture the prey. But this time, the black tortoise's sudden attack failed. It had completely awakened. It raised its head and stared at Xianxia. Its pair of dark brown eyes revealed a fierce and gloomy light. Shwa! Its aura exploded. It suddenly opened its bloody mouth and spat out 3 pitch-black pillars of water that shot towards Xianxia. Xianxia knew that these weren't ordinary pillars of water, but Xianming black water. They could instantly freeze any living being below the soul refinement stage. The 3 pillars of Xianming black water locked onto his soul and attacked from the left, center, and right, making it impossible for him to dodge. At this critical moment, he could only use the Kenshin battle robe to form a pair of wings to protect himself. Wings of the Golden Rock. In the next moment, the 3 pillars of Xianming black water struck him, creating a series of loud explosions. Bang bang bang! Xianxia was submerged by the pillars of Xianming black water. He was sent flying by the terrifying impact. He was also sent flying 10 miles away, tumbling to the side of the little black dragon. The little black dragon had been injured by the black tortoise earlier. Several dozen bones in its waist had been broken, and several dozen dragon scales had fallen off. It was constantly bleeding. With its strength at the divine origin stage, it was already very lucky that it hadn't been killed by the black tortoise in one move. "Old G, that old tortoise is too strong. What should we do?" The little black dragon flew to Xianxia's side and asked secretly. Xianxia's face was pale. He said with a serious expression, "This is the Eastern Sea's returning ruins, the most dangerous place in the world. It's not strange to encounter any danger. This old tortoise is too strong. Its defense is invincible. We're definitely not its match. We can't tangle with it. Little black dragon, return to the brocade pouch to heal. I'll get rid of it." With that, he put the little black dragon back into the 100 treasures brocade pouch. At the same time, the black tortoise moved its 4 broad feet and flew into the sky as fast as lightning, charging towards Xianxia. Shwa! In the blink of an eye, it flew 10 miles away and arrived in front of Xianxia. It opened its bloody mouth and bit down on Xianxia. Xianxia was already prepared. He immediately used all his strength and released a giant golden sword that could split heaven and earth, slashing at it. Golden slash. Bam! The giant sword that was 100 meters long slashed at the black tortoise's head with a loud bang. However, the giant golden sword was shattered into thousands of pieces and splashed in all directions. The black tortoise was unharmed. There wasn't even a white mark on the black shell on its head. Bam! The black tortoise swung its neck, and its head that was as huge as a palace smashed into Ji Tianxing, sending him flying. He rolled in the air for tens of rounds, then fell down to the ground 10 miles away, powerlessly. While he was still in the air, he spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was as pale as a sheet. Damn it! This black tortoise is so powerful. Ji Tianxing was enraged. He cursed inwardly and hurriedly flew away. Seeing that he was about to escape, the black tortoise immediately used its invisible soul power to form a soul territory to seal off the area. Ji Tianxing knew that something was wrong. He quickly used his sword heart, stepped on the golden sword, and flew away. Whoosh! He turned into a golden flowing light and was extremely fast. Soon he left the black tortoise far behind. The black tortoise was at LV5 of the soul refining stage and had an invincible defense. However, it was as big as a mountain and was too cumbersome. It was not good at speed. It chased after Ji Tianxing for a while, but it couldn't catch up with him. After about 15 minutes, Ji Tianxing left it 200 miles away. It had to stop chasing and give up helplessly. It flew back to the surface of the sea resentfully and retracted its head and limbs back into its shell. It floated quietly on the surface of the sea and continued to pretend to be an island. Ji Tianxing fled for 500 miles. Seeing that the black tortoise didn't chase after him, he heaved a sigh of relief. He put his sword heart back into his body and flapped his golden wings, continuing to fly southeast. After the black tortoise's sudden attack, he realized that the East Sea's returning ruins was indeed the most dangerous place in the world. Chapter 1009. Ji Tianxing flew for over 1,000 miles and left the black tortoise's territory. After making sure that the black tortoise wouldn't chase after him, he stopped to rest on an island. He was now very careful in his actions. Before entering the island, he used his spiritual sense to search it carefully. Seeing that there were no living creatures or dangers on the island, he landed on the island. He sat cross-legged on a huge reef and took out 2 spirit pills from his space ring. After consuming them, he began to circulate his energy to heal his injuries. Night gradually fell and the sky was dark. The island was silent, cold, and deathly still. Only the sea breeze whistled past, emitting a sobbing sound that sounded like weeping. Ji Tianxing cultivated without any distractions. It took him 6 hours to refine the spirit pills. Coupled with his powerful self-healing ability, his injuries were healed by 70 to 80%. At midnight, he finally ended his cultivation. However, when he opened his eyes, he found that there were a few pairs of scarlet eyes staring at him in the pitch-black night sky. There were 4 pairs of scarlet eyes scattered in 4 directions on the island. They were quietly approaching him. He used his spiritual sense to see that they were 4 ape-like beasts that were 30 feet tall. Each of the beasts had thick and sturdy legs, long arms that hung down to their feet, and a bloody mouth full of fangs. The 4 ape-like beasts had snow-white hair all over their bodies. Their bodies contained a tyrannical aura. Ji Tianxing stared at them for a moment and recognized them. He thought to himself, although they look like white apes, they are actually sea beasts from ancient times. These are the Sea King apes. When I was in the Imperial Court of the Water Race, I read about them in a book. The Sea King apes live in the depths of the East Sea and walk on the seabed. They are very smart, cunning, and have great strength. They can easily kill huge whale sharks and sea beasts. I didn't expect that they would discover me and want to attack me while I'm cultivating. The strength of these 4 Sea King apes has reached the spirit refining realm. They are very difficult to deal with. Ji Tianxing frowned. His expression was solemn as he secretly accumulated a powerful force in his body. He pretended not to notice the arrival of the 4 Sea King apes and continued to sit upright on the reef, not moving in the slightest. The 4 Sea King apes had their eyes on him. If he were to escape now, he would definitely suffer a thunderous attack. He had to wait for the 4 Sea King apes to approach before launching a surprise attack. Only then would he be able to break through the encirclement and escape from the island. The true essence in his body surged, accumulating an incomparably powerful strength. The sword heart in his chest also began to stir. Seeing that the 4 Sea King apes were approaching silently, they were about to attack. Now! This thought flashed through Jitianxing's mind, and he decisively counterattacked. Sword of Judgment. He urged his sword heart to fly out of his body, transforming it into a giant golden sword that was over 30 meters long. It erupted with a destructive power and fiercely blasted toward the Sea King ape in the east. Swish! The giant golden sword tore through the night sky and instantly shot 1,000 meters away, arriving in front of the Sea King ape. However, Jitianxing still underestimated the Sea King ape's intelligence and strength. The Sea King ape had long been prepared. At the critical moment when the giant sword was about to attack, it actually waved its arms to release an endless amount of cold ice, condensing a blue ice shield in front of it. Boom! Crack! Amidst a deafening loud noise, the Sword of Judgment shattered the azure ice shield and blasted the Sea King ape away. It tumbled a dozen times in the air before falling on the island 1,000 meters away, smashing the reef on the ground into pieces. However, it only suffered a light injury. It bared its teeth and roared twice before charging over even more violently. The other 3 Sea King apes no longer concealed their aura. They burst out with lightning-like speed and instantly rushed to Jitianxing's side to besiege him. They raised their huge palms and unleashed an ice-blue brilliance that filled the sky, fiercely slamming down. Earth King Shield! Jitianxing shouted in a low voice. His body surged with a yellow light, and his figure flashed into the ground, drilling into the island. Peng peng peng! The giant palms of the 3 Sea King apes slammed into the ground. Instantly, a huge crater with a radius of 100 meters was formed on the ground. Countless reefs were turned into dust and scattered in all directions. The entire island shook violently, and huge waves that were 10 feet high were stirred up on the calm sea surface. Fortunately, Jitianxing dodged in time. If he was hit by the 3 Sea King apes, even if he didn't die, he would be seriously injured. After burrowing into the ground, he ran as fast as the wind towards the seaside, wanting to escape the encirclement through the sea. However, the 3 Sea King apes had already planned this. They hurriedly brandished their giant palms and unleashed an invisible divine soul power that smashed into the ground. Swish! Swish! Invisibly, an incomparably powerful spiritual energy enveloped the entire island. In the short span of a breath, the 3 Sea King apes had joined forces to form a spiritual domain, sealing the area within a radius of 15 kilometers. Jitianxing was trapped on the island, suppressed by the divine soul domain, unable to escape. Damn it! The intelligence of these Sea King apes is not inferior to that of humans. They are so cunning. He was filled with anger and anxiously thought of a way to escape the encirclement. At this moment, the tallest and mightiest of the 4 Sea King apes spoke in human language. It shouted in a cold and dignified tone, "Kid, this area is our territory. Since you dare to trespass here, don't even think of leaving alive. Come out and surrender obediently, and I will give you a quick death." Rolling waves of sound surged on the island, spreading to a radius of 15 kilometers. Jitianxing was filled with shock and disbelief. The Sea King apes that live in the bottomless abyss of the East Sea can actually speak the common human language of the continent? Immediately after, the other 3 Sea King apes joined forces to control the spiritual domain, releasing violent and fierce spiritual energy shockwaves that blasted towards the island. The invisible spiritual energy shockwaves were like hundreds of sharp blades that pierced through the ground and reefs without any delay, heading towards Jitianxing. Jitianxing's soul suddenly trembled, and his body turned cold, as if he had foreseen the arrival of death. At this critical moment, he did not have time to think and hurriedly took out his Dharma treasure, the soul-reaping bell. He released an endless amount of energy and infused it into the soul-reaping bell. Swish! The soul-reaping bell suddenly expanded and turned into an ancient bell more than 5 meters tall, protecting him. The invisible spiritual energy shockwaves blasted the soul-reaping bell, causing it to tremble and buzz. Fortunately, the soul-reaping bell blocked the spiritual energy shockwaves, allowing Ji Tianxing to remain unharmed. However, this was not a long-term solution. The 4 Sea King apes could use their spiritual domains to continuously attack. He could not hide underground forever, and the soul-reaping bell could only withstand a few attacks before it ran out of energy. Chapter 10:10. A blazing white light barrier with a radius of 30 miles enveloped the entire island. This was the spiritual domain formed by the 4 Sea King apes. It had a powerful defense and tyrannical might. They stood on the island and jointly operated the spiritual domain, releasing wave after wave of spiritual shock waves that fiercely blasted into the ground. Even if Ji Tianxing hid underground and didn't come out, they could still use their spiritual energy to blast Ji Tianxing's soul to pieces. However, just as they were jointly casting the spell, the ground under their feet suddenly exploded with a bang. A cold and gloomy black light carrying an unstoppable sharp sword chi rushed out of the big hole and fiercely stabbed at one of the Sea King apes. That Sea King ape couldn't dodge in time and was stabbed by the black light sword chi. Its left leg was cut off on the spot. Blood gushed out from the wound and splattered all over the sky. Immediately after, a black ancient bell protecting Ji Tianxing flew out of the big hole. Ji Tianxing flew into the sky and stood on the soul-reaping bell while holding the pitch-black broken sword in his right hand. He looked down at the 4 Sea King apes from a commanding position. The injured Sea King ape furiously roared and cursed as it picked up its broken leg and circulated its spiritual energy to reattach it. The other 3 Sea King apes revealed shocked expressions. They controlled their spiritual domains and released powerful spiritual energy to attack Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing relied on the protection of the soul-reaping bell to ignore the spiritual shockwaves and slashed out a heaven-shaking giant sword with the broken sword in his hand. Azure Dragon's Sacred Sword. Boundless dark azure light gushed out from the broken sword and condensed into a 100-meter-long giant sword. It was like a huge azure dragon as it fiercely blasted towards the 3 Sea King apes. The 3 Sea King apes sensed the terrifying power contained in the Azure Dragon's sacred sword and immediately revealed frightened expressions. They retreated with extreme fear. They joined hands and used a secret technique to form a blazing white light shield to protect themselves. Kaboom! Amidst a deafening explosion, the Azure Dragon's sacred sword slashed onto the white light shield. Instantly, the shield was smashed into pieces, bursting into fragments that covered the sky and earth. The 3 Sea King apes were also sent flying by the Azure Dragon's sacred sword. They fell 1,000 meters away in a sorry state and smashed a few large craters on the ground. In the blink of an eye, all 4 Sea King apes were injured. Although they were only slightly injured, it did not affect their fighting ability. However, to them, this was an extraordinary humiliation. It caused them to be so furious that they began to roar crazily. Ji Tianxing stood in the sky, holding the broken black sword in his hand as he looked at the 4 Sea King apes with killing intent. His body once again accumulated a large amount of energy. The strength of the 4 Sea King apes was around the 2nd or 3rd level of the soul refinement realm. If it was a one-on-one battle, Ji Tianxing would definitely be able to defeat him with the power of the divine sword. However, with 4 Sea King apes joining forces, it was impossible for him to defeat them. Moreover, he knew that the Sea King apes lived in groups, so there might be more of them nearby. If a few more Sea King apes came, even if he had the divine sword in his hand, he wouldn't be able to escape today and would definitely die. Therefore, Ji Tianxing only wanted to end this battle quickly and leave this troublesome place as soon as possible. He used all of his strength and brandished the broken sword again. He ruthlessly slashed out a huge sword light towards the 2 Sea King apes. White Tiger's Sacred Sword. The 100-meter-long sword was surrounded by blazing white flames. It condensed into the image of a white tiger. It dived down from the sky with an extremely powerful momentum. It seemed that the 2 Sea King apes were about to be hit by the white tiger's sacred sword. But at this moment, an inconceivable scene appeared. The 2 Sea King apes' bodies flashed with golden light and shrunk by more than 10 times. They instantly turned into 7-foot-tall handsome youths wearing white robes. The two white-robed youths were handsome and tall. They were in high spirits and held black broken swords in their hands. Their figure, appearance, and aura were exactly the same as Ji Tianxing's. Not only that, the two of them brandished the broken sword together and slashed out dozens of huge golden swords. They actually blocked the attack of the white tiger's sacred sword. Bang! 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 The white tiger's sacred sword and the dozens of swords collapsed at the same time. They burst into fragments that filled the sky and created a terrifying hurricane on the island. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianxing was stunned on the spot. He opened his eyes wide in disbelief. He didn't understand why the two Sea King apes had turned into him. Moreover, they were exactly the same as him. It was hard to tell if they were real or fake. He turned his head and looked at the other two Sea King apes. The two Sea King apes had also turned into his appearance. Suddenly, 5 Ji Tianxings appeared on the island. He stood in the sky and looked at the 4 Ji Tianxings around him. He furrowed his brows and his eyes surged with killing intent. The 4 Ji Tianxings were all holding black broken swords. They looked at him with cold expressions or sneers. They all opened their mouths to speak. "Bastard, do you know who I am? You dare to kill me? Brat, I am you and you are me. Don't tell me you want to kill yourself. I am the real one. You are the fake one. You are the evil sea beast. Kill yourself. You have nowhere to run. Today you will die." The 4 Ji Tianxing's voices were exactly the same as his. Moreover, their voices contained a soul-sucking power. Ji Tianxing's soul trembled and his consciousness became hazy. In such a strange situation, even if Ji Ku and the Golden Mountain King were present, it would be difficult for them to distinguish the real from the fake. Ji Tianxing silently activated the power of the Soul Reaping Bell to resist the invisible soul power. After a while, he gradually calmed down and sneered, "Hee hee. I didn't expect the Sea King apes to not only be cunning, but also to be able to imitate others and speak human language. This is unbelievable. No wonder you can occupy the bottomless chasm and dominate this sea region even though you are not very strong. Unfortunately, you have met me. This little trick is useless against me." The 4 Ji Tianxings sneered at the same time. They waved their broken swords and slashed out dozens of swords to besiege him. Dozens of giant swords that were more than 30 meters long slashed at him from all directions and instantly drowned his figure. At this critical moment, he did not hesitate to close his golden wings to protect himself. Bang, bang, bang. A series of muffled booms burst out, one after another. Ji Tianxing was sent flying back for nearly 10 miles. However, his golden wings blocked all the swords and he was unharmed. He did not counterattack. He turned around and flew toward the edge of the island. Swoosh! He turned into a golden stream of light and flew to the edge of the island in the blink of an eye. What blocked his path was a blinding white light screen that covered the sky. It was the sole territory formed by the 4 Sea King apes. He held the broken sword with both hands and did not hesitate to use all his strength to slash at the light screen. Open! Endless true essence crazily poured into the broken sword, causing the broken sword to burst out with a black light that could destroy the heavens and extinguish the earth. With a loud bang, it slashed at the blazing white light screen. Kaboom! Chapter 10-11. Swish! When a crack appeared on the blinding white light screen, Ji Tianxing did not hesitate to pass through the crack and escape from the soul domain. Once he was out of the soul domain, he felt the pressure on him decrease greatly. His speed also increased. He did not even look back as he flew forward. He streaked across the night sky and quickly escaped from the island. After 2 breaths, the crack on the blinding white light screen automatically healed. The 4 Ji Tianxing returned to their original forms. They transformed back into the Sea King apes and roared furiously as they gave chase. They immediately withdrew their soul domain. White light surged from their bodies as they streaked across the night sky like shooting stars. They chased after Ji Tianxing and flew deep into the ultimate. Their speed was extremely fast. The distance between them and Ji Tianxing was constantly closing. At most, they would be able to catch up to Ji Tianxing in 100 breaths' time. Seeing this situation, Ji Tianxing did not hesitate to use the sword heart. He also used the sword kinesis flight technique to speed up his escape towards the southeast of the ultimate. Swish! His speed increased by 2 times. He quickly shook off the 4 Sea King apes. 15 minutes later, the 4 Sea King apes were 200 miles away. When they could no longer see Ji Tianxing, they had no choice but to give up the chase. They stopped in the sky unwillingly. After roaring a few times, they dived back into the deep sea. Ji Tianxing flew a few hundred miles on the sword kinesis flight before he put the sword heart back into his body. He flapped his golden wings and continued flying. In the next few days, he rushed towards the southeast of the ultimate. He was constantly approaching the area where the boundless stone appeared. During the journey, he would encounter different dangers every day. He almost lost his life a few times. Regardless of day or night, whether he was on an island or in the deep sea, danger could befall him at any time. Most of the dangers came from sea beasts and demons. These demons and sea beasts were either lurking on the island or in the deep sea. It was impossible to guard against them. They all had the strength of the soul-tempering realm. They were of different species and had different talents and techniques. Ji Tianxing had once encountered several undersea giants that were more than 100 meters tall and had been beaten up by them. In the end, he had managed to escape with a few magical treasures and divine swords. Those undersea giants not only had the strength of a soul refinement realm cultivator, but they could also fly and burrow into the ground. They could also spit out water and fire, and they could even turn invisible. They were very difficult to deal with. He had even encountered a 1,000-meter-long deep-sea serpent that looked like a flood dragon. He had fought with it for an hour, and the sea within a 1,000-mile radius had been turned upside down. That deep-sea python had the innate ability to change its color. It could turn into the color of the sea water and become one with the sea water, making it impossible for people to detect. On the island, it could turn into a black reef and conceal its whereabouts. When it flew into the sky, its skin would turn into the color of the sky, making it even harder to be discovered. Apart from the underwater giant and the deep-sea python, Ji Tianxing had also encountered millions of overlord turtles and was besieged by them for several hours. Those Tyrant King's turtles were as big as water tanks. They formed groups and shuttled back and forth between the seabed and the sky, piling up like a mountain, covering the sky and covering the earth. When Ji Tianxing was besieged by the Tyrant King's turtles, he was almost torn to pieces. In addition to these violent and ferocious demon sea beasts, he had also encountered some very strange ancient beasts. He had seen a 10,000 transformations beast. It was a wash-basin-sized 7-colored beast with a very gentle temperament. This little beast had a rare innate ability. It could swallow all kinds of gems, ores, and pearls, and then excrete 10 times the amount of gems and spirit stones. Ji Tianxing saw with his own eyes that this little beast swallowed an ice crystal gem and immediately excreted 10 of the same ice crystal gems. Such a strange innate ability made him very surprised and excited. There was no doubt that whoever could have this magical 10,000 transformations beast would have immeasurable wealth and resources. After observing for a long time, he finally decided to make a move, wanting to snatch that 10,000 transformations beast. However, before he could get close to the little beast, he was surrounded by more than a dozen soul refinement realm twin-headed trolls. After being beaten up by the twin-headed trolls, he found out that the 10,000 transformations beast was kept on the island by a group of twin-headed trolls as their cash cow. More than 20 twin-headed trolls of the soul refinement realm occupied the island and were the overlords of the surrounding 10,000 miles. Ji Tianxing was besieged by many trolls and almost lost his life. He was seriously injured and escaped the island, getting rid of the trolls' pursuit. But even so, he was still thinking about that 10,000 transformations beast. He had already memorized the location of the island and decided that when he was strong enough in the future, he would come to the East Sea's returning ruins and snatch that 10,000 transformations beast. After all, that little beast was too magical and rare in the world. Its innate ability could make all the martial artists in the world go crazy. In addition to the 10,000 transformations beast, he also saw many strange ancient beasts that he had never seen or heard of before. In just 10 days, he had encountered hundreds of demon sea beasts, greatly broadening his horizons and seeing many magical scenes. Although he gained nothing and fell into countless dangerous situations, almost losing his life several times, he did not regret not coming to the returning ruins. However, he did not regret coming to the sinkhole. Those inconceivable scenes and experiences were also a huge fortune to him. Unknowingly, 10 days passed. At noon on the 11th day, he finally arrived at the southeast of the returning ruins and arrived at the target location. At this time, the sky was shrouded in mist, and the noon sun could not penetrate it. He stood in the air above a huge island and took out a map to compare the surrounding terrain to determine his position. The island under his feet was 100 miles in radius. Most of the island was pitch-black reefs. But the difference was that this island actually had forests and grasslands, dark green and lush, full of vitality. In the distant horizon, half the sky was illuminated by colorful auroras, looking very dreamy and gorgeous. Tianxia observed the map for a long time before putting it away, a relieved smile on his face. The 3 red dots marked on the map are the places where the water tribe powerhouses found the boundless stone. They are distributed in 3 different places. If the 3 red dots were connected, it would be a triangular sea area, about 20,000 miles in radius. The island under my feet with forest trees is one of the 3 red dots. 800 years ago, the Grand Marshal of the Water Tribe found the boundless stone on this island. It seems that if I want to find the boundless stone, I can only start searching in this 20,000-mile sea area. He thought silently in his mind and made up his mind to confirm his next plan. He took out the black broken sword and carefully landed on the island, vigilantly observing the surroundings. The search for the boundless stone will start from the island under my feet. He murmured in a low voice and released his spiritual sense to cover a radius of 1,000 meters and began to search. The boundless stone was not an ordinary gem or jade, but a mineral material that contained a special power. Ordinary masters could not detect the power fluctuations of the boundless stone, even if it was placed in front of them. Chapter 10:12. On the island with a radius of 100 miles, the sea was calm and still. There was no beach on the shore, only rugged black reefs, emitting a cold and deathly aura. Only in the middle of the island was there a forest and grassland with a radius of a few dozen miles. Tianxia flew in the air 100 meters above the ground, moving slowly and using his spiritual sense to search a radius of 1,000 meters. Especially in the underground rock stratum, where the boundless stone was most likely to be hidden, he searched very carefully. In the blink of an eye, an hour passed. Tianxia gradually searched from the west coast of the island, entered the middle of the island, and flew above the dark green forest. Suddenly, he noticed that the sky was rapidly darkening, and a strong wind was blowing around the island. The island was vaguely shrouded by an invisible force, becoming cold and oppressive, full of the aura of death. He realized that something was wrong, and immediately looked around, holding the broken sword tightly with a vigilant face. The experience of the past 10 days made him realize that a powerful sea monster was about to appear. This island looked peaceful, but in fact, a powerful giant beast was lurking. However, after looking around, he did not see any living creatures, only a vast black fog was spreading, gradually enveloping the entire island. He was hesitating whether to leave the island temporarily and come back to explore after figuring out the situation. At this moment, in the sky not far behind him, a cold voice suddenly came. "You? What are you looking for?" This was the voice of a middle-aged man, speaking in the human language, but his accent was somewhat awkward and strange. This person's voice was cold and deep, with a hint of killing intent in his tone. Tianxia's expression suddenly changed, and he quickly turned his head to look behind him. He saw a burly man in black armor standing in the air 100 meters away from him. The burly man was more than 3 meters tall, and although his body shape was similar to a human's, he was not human. He had 2 heads, and his long gray hair could not cover the black horns on his forehead, as well as the sarcomas on his temples and the top of his head. His pupils were dark purple, containing a cold and deathly aura. Especially the head on his right, there was a deep scar on his forehead, extending diagonally down to his chin, almost splitting his entire head in half. This terrifying scar made him look even more ferocious and cruel. When Ji Tianxing saw his appearance, he couldn't help but frown and blurt out, "Demon?" The black qi that covered the sky, the middle-aged man's burly build, and his dark purple eyes all looked very much like a demon. That was why Ji Tianxing thought so. However, when the two-headed man heard his words, his 4 eyes flashed with a thick sense of disdain. He, ignorant human reptile, how ignorant and pitiful. How can an ugly and inferior demon be mentioned in the same breath as this king? Ji Tianxing finally understood that this two-headed man was not a demon. However, he still couldn't tell what race this person was from. Or was this guy a human or a beast? At the same time, the two-headed man frowned. A cold light flickered in his eyes as he asked icily, "Kid, you still haven't answered me. What are you looking for in my territory?" Ji Tianxing also frowned and thought to himself, this island is actually this guy's territory? Since he occupied this place, even if there are boundless stones, they must have been plundered by him. After all, this guy's strength reached around level 4 soul refinement realm. Occupying this island for a long time, he'll definitely discover boundless stones. Thinking up to here, Ji Tianxing had the intention of retreating. He looked at the two-headed man expressionlessly and said in an indifferent tone, "I came to the sinkhole to explore because I accidentally barged into this place. I wanted to see if there were any treasures. Since this island is your territory, then I'll leave here and not disturb anymore." Finished talking, he turned around and was about to leave. However, that two-headed man had a violent and bloodthirsty personality. How could he let him leave? "Halt." The two-headed man stared at Ji Tianxing's back view and said with a cold grin, "Since you're here, don't think about leaving. Stay behind and be this king's slave." As his voice fell, the vast black gas that enveloped the entire island immediately condensed into a massive black canopy that enveloped the entire island. Only then did Ji Tianxing realize that it was not a soul domain, but a large array that the two-headed man had set up long ago. After the pitch-black canopy formed by the soul rank array enveloped the entire island, the surroundings immediately became dark and gloomy. He charged to the edge of the island without hesitation. Holding the broken sword in his hand, he ruthlessly slashed out a shocking sword beam at the pitch-black canopy. Bam! Amidst the dull sound, the broken sword tore open a massive crack in the pitch-black canopy, but it did not completely shatter. A trapped beast's final struggle. The two-headed man's lips curled into a cold smile. His figure flashed as he gave chase. Heaven's seizing claw. He shouted coldly and suddenly extended his wide palms, transforming them into 2 black dragon claws the size of a house, grabbing at Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing was about to slash at the crack with his sword in an attempt to break through the pitch-black canopy and escape the island. However, the two-headed man had already reached him. 2 extremely sharp dragon claws descended from the sky and were about to tear him into pieces. In desperation, he could only turn around and block the attack from the dragon claws. Vermilion Bird's sacred sword. He roared angrily as he slashed out a 100-meter-long flaming sword with all his might. Soaring crimson flames surrounded the giant sword and condensed into the shadow of a vermilion bird. In an extremely violent manner, it blasted towards the 2 dragon claws. Boom! Amidst a deafening explosion, the 2 dragon claws collided with the vermilion bird's sacred sword and simultaneously shattered into pieces. The destructive wave of flames mixed with the black light fragments spread out in all directions and swept across a radius of 30 miles. Ji Tianxing was immediately sent flying 1,000 meters away and crashed heavily into the pitch-black canopy. The two-headed man was also forced back 10 steps. He immediately frowned as his 4 eyes were filled with astonishment. I underestimated you. Interesting. A human with such combat prowess is indeed worthy of being my servant." As he spoke, The two-headed man waved his palms again and used a mysterious spell seal to condense 18 flaming swords of different colors. 9 flame god-slaying sword. The two-headed man roared angrily as he slammed his palms together and controlled the 18 flaming swords to attack Ji Tianxing from all directions. The 18 flaming swords had a total of 9 different colors, representing 9 different types of flames. However, each of the swords was over 100 feet long and contained the power to destroy heaven and earth. The 18 flaming swords attacked at the same time as if they really had the power to slay demons and gods. In that instant, Ji Tianxing was surrounded by the 18 flaming swords and was in a dire situation with nowhere to run. The little black dragon that was cultivating in the brocade pouch had already woken up. Chapter 10:13. Upon hearing the little black dragon's reminder, Ji Tianxing came to a realization. No wonder that middle-aged man had 2 heads and dragon horns on his forehead. His appearance was savage and strange, and he did not think much of the demon race. It turned out that this person was an ancient beast, the Torch Dragon. The Torch Dragon was a branch of the dragon race. Its bloodline was even more noble than the Flood Dragons and its talent was even greater. However, the number of Torch Dragons was extremely small, and they were extremely rare in the current world. Many martial experts believed that the Torch Dragon only existed in the ancient era and had long since gone extinct. Ji Tianxing did not know if he was lucky or unlucky to encounter a Torch Dragon in the sinkhole. The 18 flaming swords were already descending, about to take his life. At this critical moment, he did not hesitate to fold his golden wings to protect himself. Boom, boom, boom. The 18 flaming swords of different attributes struck him one after another, producing a series of dull booms. Instantly, the loud booms resounded throughout the island, reverberating in the sky. Ji Tianxing's figure was engulfed. A 10-kilometer-wide pit was blasted open where he had been standing, from which a flood of 7-colored flames surged. The violent flames of various attributes burned the surrounding forest and grass to black ash. The ground was also scorched. The earth-shattering power caused the entire island to shake violently, and huge waves were stirred up on the surrounding sea. The massive commotion lasted for several dozen breaths before gradually calming down. The two-headed man stood proudly in the sky, his expression as cold as ice. His eyes were as sharp as swords as he looked down. The black ash and dust that filled the sky dispersed, but the huge pit with a radius of 5 kilometers was empty. Ji Tianxing's figure had long since disappeared. Seeing this, the two-headed man frowned and muttered in confusion, Where did that kid go? Did this king blast him to smithereens? Just as he was filled with doubts and releasing his spiritual sense to search the area, a furious roar came from behind him. Heaven-burning palm. As this voice rang out, a huge flaming palm that blotted out the sky suddenly appeared, viciously swatting at the two-headed man with destructive power. The two-headed man's expression changed drastically. He instinctively waved his palms, forming a flaming shield around himself. Boom! Amidst the deafening noise, the giant flaming palm slammed into the fire shield. The fire shield instantly collapsed, bursting into fiery fragments that blotted out the sky and splashed in all directions. The burning sky palm struck the two-headed man and sent him flying 10 miles away before crashing into the ground at the edge of the crater. The ground was smashed into a large crater, and dense cracks appeared all around. Only then did Ji Tianxing's figure appear. He stood in the sky and looked down at the two-headed man. His entire body was bursting with killing intent. Although he appeared to be unscathed and unharmed by the 9-flame god-slaying sword, he was still able to see through the 9-flame god-slaying sword. However, his face was a little pale, and there were still traces of blood at the corner of his mouth. The light of his golden wings was also a little dim. Obviously, he had paid a huge price to block and neutralize the power of the 9-flame god-slaying sword. However, he successfully blocked the 9-flames god-slaying sword's attack and took the opportunity to counterattack. He used the burning sky palm to send the two-headed man flying. Although the two-headed man was only slightly injured, he immediately flew out of the crater. However, to him, This was an intolerable humiliation. Swoosh! He flew into the sky, his body surging with black smoke. His figure became blurry and illusory as he started to transform. In the blink of an eye, a two-headed dragon that was 1,000 meters long and as black as ink appeared in the sky. Roar! It let out a dragon's roar that resounded through the clouds. Its entire body was bursting with an intimidating aura. There was no doubt that it was the real dragon body of the torch dragon. Its eyes were burning with anger as it glared at Ji Tianxing. It said in a cold voice, "Kid, you have such great combat power with your ethereal origin stage cultivation. Your talent is really rare in the world. I'm shocked. However, I've changed my mind. I'm going to kill you and devour your bloodline and soul. I'm going to take away your talent." As soon as it finished speaking, the torch dragon opened its bloody mouth and spat out a stream of colorful fire that covered the sky. It poured down on Ji Tianxing like a flood. The sky within a 20-mile radius was immediately covered by the colorful fire. The area turned into a world of fire. The air was burned to nothing. Even the space was distorted by the fire. Ji Tianxing's expression changed. He quickly took out the seal of mountains and rivers and entered the space of the magical treasure. Swoosh! The colorful fire covered the sky and the sun, drowning the golden seal of mountains and rivers. The golden light on the surface of the seal of mountains and rivers condensed into a golden shield. In an instant, it was burned into nothing by the colorful fire. Then, the golden light of the seal of mountains and rivers exploded. Its power was quickly drained and it was gradually burned red. Ji Tianxing knew very well that with the current power of the seal of mountains and rivers, it could only last for 10 breaths of time in the colorful fire before it was burned red. Then, the seal of mountains and rivers would be damaged and its power would decrease rapidly. It might even be burned into scrap metal. Damn it! I've underestimated the torch dragon's strength. The gap between our strength is too big. It's impossible for me to defeat it. No, I have to leave this place as soon as possible. After I find the boundless stone and strengthen the divine sword, I'll find it for revenge. Ji Tianxing immediately made up his mind to leave this island first. After he strengthened the divine sword and his strength reached the soul-tempering realm, he would come back for revenge. By then, he would kill the torch dragon and take the dragon crystal, dragon bone, dragon blood, and dragon tendons to use as top-notch refining materials. He used all his strength to control the seal of mountains and rivers. He passed through the colorful fire and flew toward the edge of the island. Swoosh! After a few breaths, he flew to the edge of the island but was blocked by the black sky. The golden light of the seal of mountains and rivers had dimmed and gradually turned dark red like lava. He quickly put away the seal of mountains and rivers. Holding the broken sword with both hands, he slashed at the black sky. Sky-splitting sword! Ji Tianxing roared angrily. He activated his lifetime's cultivation and poured all his energy, qi, and spirit into the most powerful strike. Instantly, the broken sword released a dazzling golden sword that was 100 meters long. Not only did this strike contain his most majestic true essence, his most profound attainments in the sword Dao, but it also contained his most focused spirit and soul. This was the sword of man and sword as one, the sword of heaven and sword as one. Its power was unparalleled. It was indestructible and sharp, and its sword qi spread for hundreds of miles. Bam! Amidst the deafening sound, a huge gap was opened in the black sky. The torch dragon's carefully set up island protection array, a soul-level array, was broken by Ji Tianxing's strike just like that. Swoosh! Chapter 1014. Torch Dragon was the one who set up the island's protective formation, so it naturally knew how powerful it was. When it saw Ji Tianxing break the formation with a single sword and escape the island, it exclaimed in disbelief. How is that possible? This brat's strength is actually so formidable. It was stunned for a moment as it stared at the gap in the pitch-black sky in shock. However, it was an expert at the spirit refinement realm after all and quickly regained its senses and guessed the reason. That's not right. That lad is strong, but that mysterious broken sword in his hand is definitely not ordinary. At that thought, Torch Dragon hurriedly passed through the formation and flew out of the island, chasing after Ji Tianxing at lightning speed. To think that a heavenly essence human lad would have such a secret treasure and coincidentally meet me. Fufu, you're dead meat. Even if I have to chase you to the ends of the world, I'll kill you and take your secret treasure and talent. Torch Dragon glared at Ji Tianxing coldly as it chased after him with all its might. It was a torch dragon that had lived for more than 1,000 years and knew that cultivation was not easy. It was even harder to raise one's strength quickly. Without extraordinary talent, abundant resources and powerful secret treasures, it would definitely not be able to advance to the essence spirit realm. Now that it had encountered such a rare opportunity, how could it miss it? Ji Tianxing was flapping his wings with all his might as he sped through the dark sky. The afternoon sky was filled with gray clouds and the sun could be vaguely seen. The sky looked gloomy and oppressive, just like his current mood. He had only flown for 50 kilometers when he realized that Torch Dragon was catching up to him and was getting closer. Damn Torch Dragon, how dare you try to kill me? Once I break through to the spirit refinement realm, I'll definitely skin you alive. He cursed internally and immediately summoned his sword heart. Stepping on his golden sword, he flew on sword kinesis flight. Swoosh! His speed doubled and he turned into a golden stream of light, leaving Torch Dragon far behind in the blink of an eye. As time passed, the distance between him and Torch Dragon gradually increased. However, Torch Dragon refused to give up and continued chasing after him. About 4 hours later, the curtain of night was about to descend, and the world was shrouded in darkness. Ji Tianxing had already traveled 8,000 miles at top speed, leaving Torch Dragon 300 miles behind. Both parties could no longer see each other's figures, but they continued to fly, not daring to stop. Zhu Long refused to give up no matter what and vowed to catch up with Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing also guessed that it was still chasing after him, so he didn't dare to let down his guard and ran for his life. However, he slightly adjusted his direction and flew towards the northwest. When he had flown 1,000 miles away, he had consumed more than half of his true essence and was completely exhausted. Only then did he stop running and land on an island to rest. Before landing, he had carefully searched the island and confirmed that there were no formations or hidden experts on the island. Then, he used the earth escape technique and hid in the depths of the ground. He hid and circulated his qi to regulate his breathing. He took a few elixirs and consumed more than a dozen spirit stones. After a night of cultivation, he finally recovered from his injuries and cultivation. That night, the island was dead silent and nothing unexpected happened. Torch Dragon didn't chase after him either. Clearly it had lost him. In the boundless ultimate, it would be difficult for it to catch up with Ji Tianxing once it lost its clues and direction. The next morning, Ji Tianxing ended his cultivation and flew out from the depths of the ground. He stood on the island covered in black reefs and compared it with the map to determine his location. Although he was close to 10,000 miles away from the island occupied by Torch Dragon, he was still in the region where the boundless stone had appeared. Using the nameless island under his feet as a starting point, he began his search. He released his invisible spirit consciousness and enveloped a radius of 2,000 meters as he probed deep into the ground. 2 hours later, he left the island and entered the depths of the sea to continue his search. The sea was extremely deep and he had to dive about 10,000 meters to reach the bottom of the sea. The pitch-black and cold bottom of the sea was dead silent and extremely mysterious. Not only were there unpredictable dangers, but there were also countless mineral veins and even unimaginable treasures buried within. A day passed quickly. Ji Tianxing didn't find the boundless stone, but he found a mineral vein hidden in the rock layer deep in the sea. It was a spiritual crystal vein that was 10 miles long. Not only did it contain countless spirit stones, but it also contained many precious gems. There was no doubt that this was a priceless treasure. Ji Tianxing entered the vein, took out the broken sword, and opened the door to the sword world. The Golden Mountain King and thousands of Earth spirit craftsmen rushed into the spiritual crystal vein with excitement and anticipation and began to mine without restraint. After a discussion, Ji Tianxing and the Golden Mountain King decided to dig out the entire vein and move it into the sword world. After all, this was a vein that had been growing for many years. As long as the vein wasn't destroyed and placed in the sword world, it would be able to continuously produce spirit stones and gems. After making up their minds, Ji Tianxing and the Golden Mountain King worked together to cast spells and began to excavate the entire vein. Thousands of earth spirit craftsmen cooperated with the two of them and dug out the huge vein that was 10 miles long from the bottom of the sea. Then, Ji Tianxing activated the power of the broken sword and stored this huge and complete vein into the sword world. After doing all this, he put away the broken sword and continued to explore the bottom of the sea. The Golden Mountain King and the craftsmen of the Earth Spirit clan excitedly returned to the sword world. They carried the mountain-like mine and placed it in the middle of the mountains. With this spirit stone vein, the people of the Earth Spirit race would no longer have to worry about resources. When the people of peaceful Earth City heard the news, they were deeply grateful to Ji Tianxing. Everyone agreed that living in the peaceful, stable, and resource-rich world of the sword was much better than wandering around in the great swamp of the southern wasteland. In the following half a month, Ji Tianxing led the Golden Mountain King to search for the aura of the boundless stone. After all, as the king of the Earth Spirit race, the Golden Mountain King was best at exploring veins and ores. He knew rocks and earth better than anyone. With the help of the Golden Mountain King, Ji Tianxing searched more than 300 islands and searched the deep sea that was more than 10,000 miles wide. However, the two of them still couldn't find any trace of the boundless stone. But they found more than a dozen veins of or on the various islands and in the dark and cold depths of the sea. There were a few metal veins that were 10 miles long, a few gem mines and meteorite mines, and even a huge natural gold mine that was 50 miles long. Every time they found an ore vein, they would send out a large number of Earth Spirit warriors and craftsmen to uproot the ore vein and move it into the sword world. Especially that huge natural gold mine. To the Earth Spirit race, who were good at forging weapons and armor, it was simply a huge fortune. From now on, they could use that natural gold mine to forge more advanced and more exquisite weapons and armor. In order to move that huge natural gold mine that was 50 miles long, more than 5,000 people of the Earth Spirit race came out in full force. Everyone worked together and spent 2 days to dig out the huge natural gold mine and move it back into the sword world. Half a month later, more than a dozen ore veins of various types appeared in the sword world. The value of each ore vein was immeasurable. A dozen ore veins were enough to sustain the sword world for thousands of years without running out of resources. Even if the Earth Spirit race's population grew to 50,000, they wouldn't lack resources. Of course, these were all Ji Tianxing's wealth. Chapter 10:15. With over a dozen different types of mineral veins, Ji Tianxing would have an inexhaustible supply of cultivation resources from now on. Not only that, but the people of the Earth Spirit race would also be able to reproduce and strengthen their tribe. These were all Ji Tianxing's wealth and power. The Earth Spirit race was extremely loyal to him. They had decided to live in the sword world forever and follow him and the divine sword forever. However, such a huge harvest made him feel gratified, but he still wasn't satisfied. He had to continue searching. He had to find the boundless stone. No matter how many resources there were, they were only wealth and external power. They could not make him stronger immediately. But the boundless stone could. He took the Jinshan King and continued to search for the aura of the boundless stone within a radius of 20,000 miles. Unknowingly, another 5 days passed. In the past 5 days, he and the Jinshan King had found another flame crystal mine. On the morning of the 6th day, he and the Golden Mountain King landed on a huge island that was several hundred miles wide. The island was very old. It was surrounded by huge black reefs that were etched by wind and waves. At the center of the island, there was a primitive forest that was several hundred miles wide. It was filled with towering ancient trees. The Golden Mountain King landed on the island with his dark golden warhammer. He touched the black reefs with his hand and came to a conclusion. Young Master Ji, this island has a history of more than 10,000 years. It was left behind from the ancient era. Moreover, the metal and rock content on this island is very high. There must be one or more mineral veins. As he spoke, the Jinshan King's eyes glowed as he looked around to investigate. To the Earth spirit race, all kinds of gems and metal veins were more tempting than beautiful women and delicious food. Ji Tianxing understood his feelings. He knew that the Golden Mountain King was eager to dig for more mineral veins. He nodded and said, "Then let's search carefully. Even if we can't find the boundless stone, it's still a good thing to dig out a few precious mineral veins. After all, the Eastern Sea's returning ruins is so dangerous. We may not have the chance to come here again. Let's take this opportunity to dig out more mineral veins and prepare for the future." The Golden Mountain King quickly nodded and rubbed his hands excitedly. He carried the dark golden warhammer and stepped onto the island. The two released their spiritual senses and divine soul power to cover an area of several thousand meters. They went deep into the ground to search. Unknowingly, 2 hours passed. The two of them gradually entered the center of the island and stepped into the primitive forest. Just as the two of them were focused on searching, several angry roars of beasts came from the depths of the forest. Roar. Ong. Then, the towering ancient trees in the depths of the forest shook violently, and the earth trembled as well. There were even muffled rumbling sounds. Ji Tianxing and Jinshan Wang's faces changed. They immediately flew into the sky and looked into the depths of the forest. Based on their previous experience, they immediately realized that some huge beast in the depths of the forest must have been alarmed. As expected, after a short while, a few mountain-like figures flew out from the depths of the forest and into the sky. Swish, swish. 6 giant red beasts flapped their huge wings and flew above the island, surrounding Ji Tianxing and the Jinshan King. The 6 giant beasts looked like a combination of a dragon and a fierce tiger. They had thick bodies that were 100 meters tall and necks that were 100 meters long. They all had 2 pairs of huge wings. Their bodies were red and emitted fiery light. Their huge eyes revealed a frightening cold light. Ji Tianxing sized them up and said to the Jinshan King through voice transmission, "Jinshan King, if I'm not wrong, these 6 giant beasts are the rare ancient beasts, the red flame pterosaurs." Red flame pterosaurs? Why don't they look like dragons? The Jinshan King frowned in confusion. He held the dark golden warhammer tightly with both hands, full of vigilance and vigilance. Ji Tianxing shook his head and explained, "They are not dragons, but beasts with the blood of dragons. These 6 red flame pterosaurs are at the 3rd or 4th level of the soul refining realm. We have to be careful. If we can't defeat them, we can only act according to the situation and escape from this island. Survival is the most important thing." The Jinshan King frowned and thought for a while. He said through voice transmission, "Young Master Ji, these 6 red flame pterosaurs are most likely guarding some kind of mineral vein or treasure." After being reminded, Ji Tianxing hesitated for a while and said, "If that's the case, let's do our best. Wealth comes from danger. I'd like to see what kind of treasure is hidden on this island." Just as the two of them were discussing, the 6 irritable scarlet flame pterosaurs couldn't wait to surround and attack. They opened their mouths and spat out raging flames that covered the sky. Moreover, they flapped their huge wings crazily, creating a hurricane that increased the power of the raging flames. Ji Tianxing and the Jinshan King couldn't dodge in time and were engulfed by the raging flames. The primitive forest within a 20-mile radius was burned to ashes by the raging flames. Even the ground was scorched black. The Jinshan King had a special physique. His body had been tempered thousands of times. Even the lava couldn't melt him. He ignored the raging flames and raised his dark golden warhammer with both hands. He charged bravely towards a scarlet flame pterosaur and launched an attack. Skyquake hammer. Ji Tianxing didn't want to be outdone. He used his golden wings to protect his body and released a metal emperor slash at one of the red flame pterosaurs. Bang bang! 2 loud sounds exploded at the same time. The 2 red flame pterosaurs that were hit were sent flying almost at the same time. The 2 red flame pterosaurs flew 1,000 meters away and crashed into the ruins. They created a huge crater in the ground and raised a cloud of dust. However, they were only slightly injured. It didn't affect their fighting ability. Ji Tianxing and the Jinshan King's counterattack made them even more furious. They attacked crazily. The other 4 red flame pterosaurs also extended their sharp claws and opened their bloody mouths to attack the 2 of them. Instantly, the 2 of them were besieged by the 6 red flame pterosaurs. They were beaten to a pulp and could only keep dodging. After fighting for half an hour, half of the island was turned into ruins. The ground was scorched and cracked like a spiderweb. The earth-shattering commotion spread to a radius of several hundred miles. Both Ji Tianxing and Jinshan Wang were heavily injured. Their bodies were riddled with wounds, and blood was gushing out of their wounds. They had used up a lot of their true essence. Their strength was rapidly weakening. However, the 6 red flame pterosaurs didn't end up well either. One of the red flame pterosaurs had its spine and 2 of its wings broken by the Jinshan King's dark golden warhammer. It ran away in a bloody mess. The other red flame pterosaur was also charred black by Ji Tianxing's thunder spiritual eyes. Then he used his ultimate move, Heaven-Splitting Sword, and split the scarlet flame pterosaur in half. Chapter 10:16. Although Ji Tianxing and Jinshan King had paid a heavy price to beat the 2 red flame pterosaurs and force them to flee, the remaining 4 red flame pterosaurs were only slightly injured. However, the remaining 4 red flame pterosaurs were only slightly injured, and their combat power was already very strong. The 2 of them were forced to retreat as they were surrounded by the 4 red flame pterosaurs. Ji Tianxing had no choice but to send a voice transmission to Jinshan King. Jinshan King, we can't drag this on any longer. Otherwise, we'll definitely lose. We don't know the situation on this island. We don't know how many red flame pterosaurs are hiding on this island. If 2 more come, we'll be dead. What should we do, young Master Ji? Should we try to escape? Jinshan King asked anxiously as he blocked the attacks of the 2 red flame pterosaurs. Ji Tianxing frowned as he looked at the ruins under his feet. He said in a deep voice, "Let's go underground and avoid them for now. These red flame pterosaurs are good at controlling fire. If we go underground, they might not be able to use their full strength." That makes sense. Jinshan King nodded in agreement. After the 2 of them blocked another round of attacks from the red flame pterosaurs, they dug into the ruins and went underground. The 4 red flame pterosaurs hesitated for a while before they followed them into the ground. Their bodies were covered in a layer of yellow light as they moved quickly in the depths of the ground, chasing after Ji Tianxing and Jinshan King. However, their bodies were too big, and they were not good at burrowing, so their speed was obviously a few times slower. Not long after, Ji Tianxing and Jinshan King reached the center of the island and went 5,000 meters underground. The 4 red flame pterosaurs were getting slower and slower. They were about 1,000 meters away from them, but they still could not catch up. Suddenly, Jinshan King, who was leading the way, stopped moving. He held the warhammer with both hands and stopped in front of a layer of rocks. He said excitedly, "Young Master Ji, we found it." "What did we find? The boundless stone?" Ji Tianxing, who was covered in a yellow light shield, followed closely behind him and asked in confusion. The Golden Mountain King shook his head and said excitedly, "No, it's not the boundless stone. It's the metal or vein I mentioned before." Ji Tianxing hurriedly took him through the thick rock layer and traveled 1,000 meters underground. A moment later, the 2 of them passed through the grayish-brown rock layer and saw a huge silver vein in front of them. The stellar stone lode, which looked like a silver mountain range and a dragon, lay quietly in the depths of the earth, surrounded by endless rocks and mud. Even though it was pitch black underground, this star-stone vein was emitting dazzling starlight. The mineral vein contained an incomparably vigorous and boundless energy, but it did not erupt. It was only hidden within the mineral vein. It was very obscure and secretive. No one would be able to detect the existence of the mineral vein unless they were near it. "It's actually a star-stone mine." Ji Tianxing murmured excitedly, then continued with a deep voice, "Star stones are one of the materials used to forge and refine soul-grade magical treasures. A fist-sized star stone can be sold for a sky-high price of 2 million spirit stones. This mine is at least 10 miles long. I wonder how many star stones can be refined from it. The value of this mine is really immeasurable. The Golden Mountain King also widened his eyes in surprise and said excitedly, "Young Master Ji, we're really rich now." A single star stone vein was worth 10 ordinary veins. The value of this stellar stone mineral vein was at least several tens of billions. No matter what, even if I have to pay with my life, I will dig this mine out and move it back to peaceful Earth City. Ji Tianxing understood his feelings. Seeing such a rare star stone mine was like seeing a peerless beauty. If he could not take it for himself, it would be worse than death. Ji Tianxing waved his fist and said firmly, "All right, we'll move this star stone mine." The Golden Mountain King hesitated and asked worriedly, "But the 4 red flame pterosaurs are still chasing after us. What should we do?" As he spoke, he turned his head and looked behind him, using his divine soul power to detect the movements of the 4 red flame pterosaurs. However, when he looked, he was stunned. What's wrong with the 4 red flame pterosaurs? They're hiding in the rock layer and not chasing after us. The Golden Mountain King's voice was filled with astonishment and confusion. Ji Tianxing hurriedly released his spirit sense and passed through the 1,000-meter-thick rock layer. As expected, he saw the 4 red flame pterosaurs on the other side of the rock layer, not moving forward. They gathered together and were whispering to each other about something. Judging from their expressions and eyes, they seemed to be in awe and fear of the star veins in the rock stratum. Such a strange reaction made Ji Tianxing frown. He had a bad premonition. Golden Mountain King, those red flame pterosaurs have been on the island for a long time. They know the island better than we do. Judging from their expressions and reactions, there seems to be something wrong with this star stone mine. Perhaps there's something that they fear and respect. The Golden Mountain King also saw the clue and said with a serious face, "Yes, I have the same feeling. Young Master Ji, we'd better be careful." Ji Tianxing nodded and said, "Yes, it's good for us if the 4 red flame pterosaurs don't dare to chase after us. Let's be more vigilant and explore the situation of this star stone mine first." Then, the 2 of them stepped on the silver star stone mine. They moved forward step by step, exploring the situation of the star stone mine. The huge vein was 5 kilometers long and 1 kilometer wide. It was like an ancient dragon that was sleeping deep under the ground. Their spiritual awareness and soul power enveloped the area within a radius of several thousand meters, allowing them to examine the loads of stars and the rocks and soil in the surroundings with great clarity. In the blink of an eye, an hour passed. They walked for 5 miles and came to the center of the star stone mine. During this time, they didn't find anything strange or dangerous. All of a sudden, Ji Tianxing's spiritual awareness detected a wisp of unusual energy fluctuations in the load of stars 1,000 meters ahead of them. It was a black crystal as big as a wash basin. It was embedded in the silver star stone mine as if it had merged with the star stone mine. However, the energy fluctuation of the black crystal was obviously different from the star stones. It seemed to be out of place. How could such a strange stone be born in the star stone mine? Ji Tianxing murmured doubtfully. He slowly approached the black crystal. The Golden Mountain King also sensed the special black crystal. He secretly used a secret technique to observe and test it. Suddenly, his face changed. His eyes were filled with joy. He turned to Ji Tianxing and asked excitedly, "Young Master Ji, the energy of that black crystal is very special. It seems to be similar to the boundless stone you mentioned." Chapter 1017. Originally, Ji Tianxing's attention was only on the star mineral vein, and he was excited and surprised. He never thought that the star mineral vein would have any connection with the boundless stone. However, when he heard the Golden Mountain King's reminder, his body shook, and he showed an expression of realization. No wonder this black crystal stone is so strange. Its energy waves are mysterious and obscure. It's completely different from the star mineral vein. He sped up and touched the black crystal stone. Soon, he reached the side of the black crystal stone. He stood in the middle of a cluster of silver star ores and stared at the black crystal in the middle of the cluster of rocks. After a moment of careful observation, he finally showed an excited expression. "That's right. This is it. This is the boundless stone I've been looking for. I didn't expect it to be hiding on this mysterious island 5,000 meters underground. If we hadn't landed on this island and been attacked by the red flame pterosaurs, we wouldn't have come so deep underground, and we wouldn't have been able to find it. After spending so many months and going through so many dangers and twists, it wasn't in vain. It was all worth it." Ji Tianxing secretly clenched his fists, murmuring excitedly. His mood was a little complicated, and he secretly sighed at the wonders of fate. The Golden Mountain King was also happy and excited for him. He nodded excitedly and said, "Yes, the heavens still care for young Master Ji. This is your destiny." Ji Tianxing squatted down, slowly reaching out to touch the diamond-shaped boundless stone. He murmured doubtfully, "On the surface, this looks like an ordinary black crystal stone. But why is it called the boundless stone? Why is there no strong spiritual energy waves, but a very obscure and mysterious aura?" The Golden Mountain King also frowned doubtfully, shaking his head. He couldn't answer this question. Then Ji Tianxing's hand touched the boundless stone. He immediately felt as if he had touched a piece of 10,000-year-old ice. An unparalleled bone-chilling coldness flowed into his body through his palm, along his arm, into his mind, and then into his soul. At that moment, he only felt that his entire palm, right arm, and even half of his body were sealed by ice. He lost consciousness like a stone statue, as if half of his body no longer belonged to him. Even his soul seemed to have been sealed and imprisoned. It was as if he was dead. He didn't have any feelings or thoughts. Fortunately, the heaven-mending orb had fused with his soul and was sleeping peacefully in his mind. When the mysterious power of the boundless stone was about to seal his soul, the heaven-mending pearl lit up with a sacred white light, emitting a gentle and warm power. Shwa! That sacred white light filled his mind, saving his soul and half of his body, dispelling the mysterious power of the boundless stone, allowing him to regain his senses and consciousness. Phew! Ji Tianxing hurriedly retracted his right hand and exhaled a mouthful of turbid air as if relieved of a heavy burden. His face was full of shock. That feeling just now made him feel as if he had walked through the gates of hell, as if he had experienced death. Jinshan King noticed the change in Ji Yunshu's expression and hurriedly asked with concern, "Young Master Ji, what's wrong? Are you all right?" Ji Tianxing was silent for a moment before he calmed down. With a serious expression, he said, "What a terrifying power. No wonder it's called the boundless stone that can be used to forge divine weapons. It's too terrifying." Jinshan King was puzzled and asked in confusion, "Young Master, what's going on?" Ji Tianxing gazed at the boundless stone and told him what he had experienced and felt just now. After listening, Jinshan King was also shocked and felt that it was inconceivable. It's just a piece of, or how could it have such terrifying power and effect? I have lived for hundreds of years, and I believe that I know all kinds of ores in the earth like the back of my hand. However, I have never heard of such a magical and powerful ore. If this ore is used to forge a weapon, wouldn't it be able to seal the soul and kill the enemy's soul in a second? Ji Tianxing frowned and thought for a moment. With a serious expression, he nodded and said, "That's right. Therefore, I want to use this boundless stone to repair the broken divine sword. As long as the broken sword is repaired, it will have the terrifying power of the boundless stone, and the power of the broken sword will increase exponentially." Jinshan King thought for a moment and said worriedly, "Young Master, this boundless stone is indeed powerful, but its power is so mysterious and terrifying. Who can smelt it and use it to repair the divine sword? Even if I am a grandmaster craftsman, I dare not touch this boundless stone." Ji Tianxing was also worried and hesitant. He nodded and said, "That's right, this is indeed a difficult problem. However, let's not think too much about it. Let's dig out this boundless stone first. As for how to smelt it and use it to repair the broken sword, we'll think of a way later." After saying that, he took out the broken sword and was about to dig out the boundless stone from the star or vein. The Jinshan king quickly stopped him and said with a solemn expression, "Young master, it's better to let me do the mining for you." Ji Tianxing knew that he was a top grandmaster in this field, so he nodded and agreed. Jinshan king stared at the boundless stone and observed it for a while. Then he held the dark golden warhammer with both of his hands and operated the secret art with all of his power. He didn't dig out the boundless stone directly. Instead, he used the warhammer to break the star or vein around the boundless stone. He took out a piece of or as big as a water tank from the star or vein, leaving a huge black hole in the star or vein. The huge or covered the boundless stone. Jinshan king had to break all the star or vein before he could take out the boundless stone. However, when he just picked up the ore and was about to break the edge of the ore, something strange happened. From the black hole in the star or vein, dark red blood light gushed out like fire. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Over 20 balls of dark red blood light rushed out from the black hole and screeched as they flew towards Ji Tianxing and Jinshan king. At this moment, the two of them finally saw it clearly. They were over 20 strange red birds. The strange birds looked like crows and three-legged birds. They looked very strange. They must be ancient species. Each of the blood birds was around sky origin stage LV9, very close to the soul tempering stage. They were as fast as lightning and emitted extremely dense blood light. They had the power to confuse the soul. Ji Tianxing and Jinshan king were dizzy and confused. Bang, bang, bang. Amidst a series of muffled sounds, the two, who were caught off guard, were sent flying by a flock of blood birds. They fell miserably into the star vein. However, the sudden turn of events left the two of them a little confused. However, the two of them immediately reacted and used their secret techniques to attack the flock of blood birds. Swish, swish. Ji Tianxing released golden sword light that covered the sky and ground. He cut over 10 blood birds into pieces and scattered them in the star or vein. Jinshan king also swung his warhammer and used the white light of his divine soul to kill over 10 blood birds. The group of blood birds was finally killed. The star or vein quieted down. Ji Tianxing picked up the stone that was as big as a water tank and placed it into his interspatial ring. Then, he brought Jinshan king back to the black hole and observed it carefully. Below the water tank-sized black hole, white light was faintly surging, forming a vortex. The white light vortex emitted the power of space. It was like a portal that led to an unknown place. Seeing this, Ji Tianxing and Jinshan king looked at each other with surprise and anticipation. I didn't expect there to be a portal under the boundless stone. I wonder where this portal leads to? Young master, according to my experience, this kind of space vortex hidden deep underground is very likely to be the entrance to a secret realm. Entrance to a mystery realm. Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and said seriously, other than a mystery realm, it could also be an alternate space. Chapter 10:18. Ji Tianxing and Jinshan king both understood that opportunities often came with dangers. Just like just now, they were besieged by a few flaming pterosaurs not long after they landed on the island. They were severely injured and had to escape to the depths of the earth to hide. That was how they found the boundless stone by chance. Now, the space vortex in front of them could be the door to the treasure or the passage to the forbidden land of death. Both of them frowned, silently pondering and weighing the pros and cons. After a while, both of them had an answer in their hearts. They looked up at each other. Jinshan king said solemnly, "Young Master Ji, whether it is the star mineral vein or the boundless stone, they are both rare treasures. I believe that the space vortex hidden in the star mineral vein must be extraordinary and mysterious as well. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. It will be a pity if we don't go in and take a look. We will regret it in the future." Ji Tianxing nodded and said, "That's right. This is such a great opportunity and adventure. Ordinary people can't even dream of it. How can we miss it? No matter whether the passage is a treasure or a forbidden land, whether it is a blessing or a disaster, we have to go in and take a look to know the result." Both of them reached a consensus and prepared to enter the space vortex to explore. Of course, before that, Both of them took elixirs to heal their injuries and recover to their peak condition. Unknowingly, 6 hours had passed. Both of them relied on their strong physiques and self-healing abilities to recover from their injuries and skills. After they were ready, Ji Tianxing held the broken sword and stepped into the space vortex formed by the white light. Swoosh! The white light flashed and swallowed his body. Clearly, he had passed through the spatial tunnel and entered another space. Jinshan King held his war hammer tightly and stepped forward cautiously. He was about to step into the space vortex. However, the space vortex formed by the white light suddenly disappeared. It disappeared? How could this be? Gold Mountain King was dumbfounded. He stared at the black hole, his eyes filled with shock and worry. How could the space vortex suddenly disappear? Could it be that only one person is allowed to enter the passage? Or perhaps, only humans were allowed to enter that place? It's over. Young Master Ji went in alone. If he encountered any danger, who would protect him? No, I have to think of a way to get in touch with young Master Ji. Otherwise, he'll definitely think that I'm a coward who doesn't dare to enter with him. The Golden Mountain King was anxious and worried. He walked around the black hole a few times with his warhammer, but he could not think of a way. The sudden disappearance of the spatial vortex completely disrupted his plan, leaving him helpless. After racking his brains for a long time, he still couldn't come up with a solution. He could only squat beside the black hole and wait patiently for Ji Tianxing to come out. He silently prayed in his heart, "Young Master Ji, oh young Master Ji, I hope that you will be blessed by the heavens. Please don't let anything bad happen to you." After saying that, he looked at the rock layer not far away. Fortunately, the 4 red flame pterosaurs guarding the rock layer were still quietly lurking underground and had no intention of attacking. The Jinshan King was slightly relieved. He raised his spirits and looked at the black hole with anticipation, waiting for Ji Tianxing to return. Swoosh! With a flash of brilliance, Ji Tianxing clearly felt that he had passed through a mysterious and vast spatial tunnel and entered an alternate space. When the white light in front of him dissipated, his feet finally landed on solid ground. He looked around vigilantly. He held the broken sword in his hand and covered himself with a layer of true energy shield to guard against any possible danger. However, when he looked around, he immediately let down his guard. This was an alternate dimension that was rich in spiritual chi of heaven and earth and was full of spirit. In other words, this was a paradise that was like a paradise. At this moment, he was standing at the foot of a 1,000-zhang tall mountain. Under his feet was a green grassland with colorful flowers among the fragrant grass that was half a man's height. In front of him was the 1,000-zhang tall mountain. The mountain was covered with towering ancient trees. It was a lush and verdant scene. Halfway up the mountain, there was a waterfall that was about 100 meters wide. It poured down from a height of 1,000 meters and fell into a deep pool at the foot of the mountain. At the top of the mountain, covered by white clouds and thick fog, a modeled ancient palace could be vaguely seen. Half of the palace's corner and cornice were exposed. The sky was clear for thousands of miles. The sky was blue as if it had just been washed, and a red sun hung high in the sky. Ji Tianxing did not know where he was or how vast this area was. However, he knew that this was definitely a cave abode where a powerhouse lived in seclusion. Fortunately, it was not a forbidden area where there was a high chance of survival, but a mysterious and ancient secret realm. With the broken sword in hand, he strode across the green grassland towards the tall mountain. At the foot of the mountain, there was a 5-foot-wide bluestone staircase. It followed the steep mountain up and connected to the palace at the top of the mountain. Originally, Ji Tianxing could fly into the sky and directly land on the mountain to see what was going on. However, it was his first time in this unfamiliar secret realm. Naturally, he could not do that. He could not see the whole picture of the mountain and might encounter danger. If there was a hidden powerhouse living in the ancient palace at the top of the mountain, his lack of manners would definitely offend him and cause unnecessary disputes. In a moment, he arrived at the foot of the mountain and was about to step onto the bluestone staircase. At this moment, he suddenly saw that on the ground beside the staircase, there was a gray-white stone tablet that was more than 10 feet tall. He took a closer look. On the gray-white stone tablet, there were 3 ancient and mysterious characters engraved on it. Beside the 3 big characters, there was a line of small characters. Ji Tianxing had read a lot of books, both ancient and modern. After carefully identifying it for a moment, he recognized that it was the incomparably ancient XNE ancient seal characters. The 3 big characters were Eastern Mountain residents. And the line of small characters beside it was a sentence: cultivate one's body and mind, observe the heavens and read the world, lie drunk in the clouds and smile at the world. Ji Tianxing was suddenly filled with deep veneration. He thought to himself, Eastern Mountain Residence should be the name of this cave abode. He didn't know who the owner of the Eastern Mountain Residence was, to be able to say such bold and majestic words. It seems that the owner of Eastern Mountain Residence must be a peerless powerhouse living in seclusion. Otherwise, he would not have such an arrogant aura. He sighed in his heart and was about to withdraw his gaze. However, he suddenly realized that the gray-white stone tablet was actually made of precious psychic white jade. His body shook again, and his eyes were filled with shock. He exclaimed in disbelief, "The psychic white jade is a precious material for refining weapons. A piece the size of a fist can be sold for a high price of 100,000 spiritual stones. An entire piece of psychic white jade that is 10 feet tall is a rare treasure in the world. It can be called a priceless treasure." Chapter 10:19. The rare psychic white jade was actually treated as an ordinary stone tablet and placed in the grass at the foot of the mountain. Ji Tianxing could not imagine how divine the owner of the Eastern Mountain Residence, who treated this priceless treasure like a stubborn stone, was. His heart throbbed for no reason. He desperately wanted to climb to the top of the mountain and pay a visit to the owner of the Eastern Mountain Residence, if that hidden powerhouse was still alive. However, before he stepped on the limestone steps, he first uprooted the stone tablet and put it into his space ring. This huge and complete psychic white jade could be sold for at least 100 million spiritual stones when he returned to the Central Plains. How could he miss such a treasure? After keeping the jade tablet, Ji Tianxing stepped onto the limestone steps. However, just as his feet stepped onto the steps, he felt an invisible force brewing in the bluestone steps. He immediately stopped and sensed carefully. Then he found a clue. The seemingly ordinary limestone steps are covered with mottled traces of vicissitudes. It's obvious that it's been through tens of thousands of years. I didn't expect that the limestone steps could still activate the power of a formation after tens of thousands of years. It's unbelievable. Tens of thousands of years, the transformations of the sea and mulberry fields, could erase everything in the world. No matter if it was a peerless expert or a divine weapon that dazzled the world, they would all gradually wither and turn into ashes in the tens of thousands of years. Even a powerful formation was no exception. In the end, its power would be exhausted and it would gradually disappear. However, the limestone steps under Ji Tianxing's feet still activated the formation, and its power was vigorous. He had no choice but to walk carefully. His spiritual sense seeped into the limestone steps to check its mysteries. However, the formation was extraordinary. It was invisible and unfathomable. The 3,000 steps from the foot of the mountain to the top of the mountain had merged with the entire mountain as if it had a life of its own. Such a strange and mysterious thing shocked him, but it also made him more curious and expectant. Rustle, rustle, rustle. He moved his feet and took 3 steps in a row. Finally, the limestone steps under his feet changed. 4 of the limestone steps 3 steps in front of him disappeared into thin air, and an empty space appeared. Can't we climb the mountain without the bluestone steps? Ji Tianxing curled the corners of his mouth, holding a hint of a smile. He took a few steps forward and was about to step onto the ground where the steps were missing. The seemingly ordinary ground actually released invisible spiritual energy that condensed into a dozen or so sharp blades that shot towards him like a rain of arrows. At the critical moment, his expression changed. Without hesitation, he circulated his energy and soared into the sky, wanting to escape. However, a formless pressure also descended from the sky. It was as if a huge mountain was pressing down on his head, causing his feet to be unable to leave the ground, let alone fly. Damn it! It's so dangerous. This seemingly ordinary limestone staircase is actually a trap path filled with murderous intent. This thought flashed through Ji Tianxing's mind, and he quickly summoned the soul-reaping bell, enveloping himself. Peng peng peng! More than a dozen sharp blades condensed from spiritual energy slammed into the soul-reaping bell one after another, producing a dull, loud sound. The soul-reaping bell was actually struck until it trembled continuously, emitting a series of buzzing sounds that didn't disappear for a long time. If not for the protection of the soul-reaping bell, Ji Tianxing would have been seriously injured even if he didn't die. His expression instantly became solemn. His feet stopped on the limestone staircase, and he didn't dare to move anymore. This limestone staircase contains the mysteries of array formations and is filled with danger. The slightest carelessness will cost me my life. Since it's difficult to reach the peak, then I'll retreat. He turned his head and looked behind him. The few steps he walked on previously had long disappeared. Looks like there's no way back after stepping on the limestone staircase. I can only continue forward. I have to study the array formation properly. How can I safely cross the limestone staircase and reach the peak? He stood on the limestone staircase, circulating his energy and spiritual consciousness to carefully observe the staircase in front of him, the mountain terrain on his left and right, and began to ponder hard. The foot of the mountain was silent. Time passed quietly. Very quickly, for hours passed. Ji Tianxing frowned and pondered for a long time. Suddenly, a flash of inspiration flashed through his mind, and he revealed a relieved smile. I understand now. The owner of this eastern mountain residence prided himself on his ability to observe the heavens and see the world. Clearly, he was a supreme expert that surpassed the soul refinement realm. He lived here in seclusion and casually set up an array formation that could merge the limestone staircase with heaven and earth, borrowing the power of heaven and earth to operate it. Even after tens of thousands of years, as long as this mountain is not destroyed, the array formation will not wither and dissipate. If I want to break the array formation, I have to borrow the power of heaven and earth to fight with force. He thought of a way to break the array formation and immediately began to act. He circulated his energy and activated the soul-reaping bell to protect himself. He burst forth with all his strength and charged forward. Swoosh! The soul-reaping bell protected him as he charged through the empty space and rushed forward as fast as the wind towards the limestone staircase. Dozens of sharp white blades of light shot out from the grayish-brown soil and attacked him from all directions. Bam! 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 In a series of muffled sounds, the soul-reaping bell trembled and let out a dull buzzing sound. Ji Tianxing finally crossed the empty space 10 steps away with great difficulty. When he landed on the limestone staircase, his face was already pale and blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth. The soul-reaping bell's power was almost exhausted. It was dim and no longer had any power. Fortunately, he successfully charged through the empty space and landed on the limestone staircase. He could successfully begin to break the array formation. Advance 4 steps, retreat 2 steps, advance 3 steps, retreat 1 step, he muttered in a low voice. He took 4 steps in a row and then retreated 2 steps. The limestone staircase was indeed safe and did not release any powerful attacks. He silently chanted the formula to break the array and borrowed the power of heaven and earth to offset the power of the array formation on the limestone staircase. He continued to climb up. Unknowingly, an hour had passed. He advanced and retreated thousands of steps. Finally, he crossed more than 1,000 steps and arrived at the waist of the mountain. During this process, he was safe and sound. The more than 1,000 limestone staircase disappeared one after another. However, when he reached the waist of the mountain, he could sense that the power of the array formation on the limestone staircase had changed. Correspondingly, his method of breaking the array formation had to change. Moreover, if he took a wrong step, he would be counterattacked by the array formation, which would be more powerful and dangerous. However, with his previous experience, Ji Tianxing was confident and found a trick to breaking the array formation. He stood on the stone staircase at the waist of the mountain and carefully observed and pondered for 2 hours before he found a way to break the array formation. 4 hours later, he finally crossed more than 1,000 steps and reached the peak of the mountain from the waist of the mountain. When his feet left the limestone staircase and successfully reached the peak of the mountain, he relaxed and let out a long sigh of relief. He rested for a moment before stepping onto the square at the peak of the mountain. Chapter 10:20. That ancient-looking palace had obviously been there for tens of thousands of years. The walls and stone surface were mottled and peeled off, and there were huge cracks. The octagonal cornice of the palace was originally exquisite and beautiful, but now it was broken, and even a few corners of the cornice were broken. Tianxia probed with his spiritual consciousness and found that there was still a large array protecting the palace. Although the power of that array had been weakened to the extreme, it was still a spirit soul. However, it was a primordial soul-level formation after all. Even if it only had 10% of its power left, it was still not something that he could easily break. The gate of the palace was tightly shut, and an invisible array formation shield enveloped the entire palace. The huge square was paved with precious celestial spirit jade, and it happened to be square, like a huge chessboard. On the ground of the square, dark golden bricks were laid out in crisscrossing lines. This square with a radius of 200 meters was indeed a huge chessboard. There were more than a dozen chess pieces on the chessboard, and they were more than a dozen stone sculptures that were taller than a person. Some were carved as lions, some as tigers, and some as cheetahs, giant elephants, and flying eagles. Although each stone sculpture was lifelike, and the carvings of the beasts looked very lifelike. However, these stone sculptures had been there for too long, and they were mottled and full of cracks. There were also 2 piles of gray stone fragments on the east and west sides of the square. Tianxia observed for a moment and found that they were broken pieces of many stone sculptures of beasts, and they were crushed by someone. It seems that the owner of the Eastern Mountain residence used the square as a chessboard and played chess here. He was playing the beast chess of the ancient times, and I have seen it in ancient books before. It was a kind of chess that was fierce and murderous, and it contained the Tao of heaven and earth, and the truth of martial arts. Until now, the ancient beast chess had been lost for many years, and there were very few people who still knew about it. I wonder who the owner of the Eastern Mountain residence was playing with? What was the final outcome? Tianxia stood in the square, staring at the remaining dozen chess pieces on the chessboard, and couldn't understand it after observing for a long time. Helpless, he could only put down the beast chess for now and cross the square to the palace gate. The ancient bronze door had long been rusted. Even the door knocker and the carvings of the mythical beasts on the door had been corroded and damaged. He stood in front of the door and opened his pure heart Dharma eye. He used his spiritual sense to carefully observe the array and ponder how to break it. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, Tianxia was immersed in the wonders of the primordial spirit grade array formation, racking his brains to think of a way to break it, and actually forgot about the passage of time. Very quickly, 5 days passed. It wasn't until the morning of the 6th day that he finally woke up as if from a dream and closed his eyes. Then, when he opened his eyes again, his eyes were clear and firm, surging with a trace of joy. He slowly stretched out his hands, and golden light surged in his palms. He waved his palms and shot out arcs of light, which condensed into mysterious patterns and poured them into the bronze gate. After repeating this over 100 times, he was exhausted, and half of his power had been consumed. Only then did the bronze door light up with a dim golden light. After shaking a few times, it slowly opened to both sides. Great! After 10,000 years, the essence soul grade grand formation has weakened to such an extent, yet I was actually able to break it with my own hands. It's truly inconceivable. His heart was filled with excitement, and he was proud of his attainments in array formations. After the bronze door opened, he couldn't wait to step through the door and enter the palace to see what was inside. Behind the door was a vast courtyard. Originally, the courtyard should have been clean, the stone path wide, and there should have been rare spirit trees, spirit flowers, and rare herbs in the garden. However, The courtyard was now filled with dust, which had condensed into hard soil. There was only soil and floating ash left in the garden. The spirit trees and rare herbs had long turned into ashes and melted into the soil. Ji Tianxing walked through the courtyard, and as he walked towards the main hall, he pondered, this eastern mountain residence should be the cave residence of a certain powerhouse from 10,000 years ago. Now that 10,000 years have passed, even if that hidden powerhouse had the strength of a god, he should have already passed away. I only hope that this peerless powerhouse left behind some secret inheritance or rare treasures in his cave residence. Only then will my risky trip here not be in vain. After a while, he reached the entrance of the main hall and reached out to push open the heavy door. What was slightly embarrassing was that the door made of refined star iron was too heavy. When he pushed the door, he used too much strength and directly pushed the two doors to the ground, crashing into the main hall with a loud boom. The entire door frame had been destroyed. The two doors of refined star iron weighing 50,000 pounds had crushed two large holes in the floor of the main hall, and dense cracks had appeared. Refined star iron. It's also a precious material for refining soul-grade magic treasures. The owner of Eastern Mountain Residence actually used it as a door. What a waste! Ji Tianxing sighed in his heart. With a thrifty attitude, he lifted the two doors and put them into his spatial ring. Then, he carefully observed the dimly lit main hall. The spacious main hall was decorated very simply. Other than the 6 vermilion pillars that supported the dome, there were only a few stone sculptures in the main hall, and a few murals of mountains and rivers on the walls. Other than that, there wasn't even a throne in the main hall. There was only a praying mat made of heavenly fire spirit jade placed on the seat of honor in the main hall, covered by a thick layer of dust. Ji Tianxing waved his hand to sweep away the thick layer of dust. Only then did the praying mat reappear in the light of day, shining with a crimson brilliance and emitting a turbulent and violent energy. Without a doubt, this priceless praying mat had also become his. He walked around the main hall and didn't find any valuable treasures. Then he left the main hall through a side door and entered a study. This study was very spacious and bright. The decorations were simple and elegant, and the mood was lofty. Of course, after 10,000 years, no matter how elegant the study was, after being covered by a thick layer of dust, it became dull and ordinary. Moreover, the ground and walls had cracked and peeled. A few stone bookshelves were also broken. Many books that were neatly arranged on the bookshelves had long been corroded into ashes. The ground was littered with gravel, covered with ashes and weathered pages. When the wind blew, they turned into dust. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianxing sighed inwardly. Sigh, I originally wanted to find some clues in this study to understand the owner of Eastern Mountain Residence. I didn't expect the study to be so corroded. No matter what book it is, after 10,000 years, it will turn into dust. He shook his head in disappointment and was about to turn and leave. However, from the corner of his eye, he saw a dark golden box buried in a pile of gravel in the corner. He picked up the metal box that looked like a small treasure chest. After opening it, he saw a black ancient book inside. The ancient book was not made of paper, but of a special metal that was as cold as ice. On the cover of the black ancient book were 5 ancient, dark golden characters. Chapter 1021. Ji Tianxing picked up the thick black book and studied it carefully. The heaven reading record of the world. These 5 dark golden ancient words were engraved on the cover, having not faded even after tens of thousands of years. The words were vigorous and forceful, revealing a trace of a majestic aura that transcended worldly matters and looked down upon the world. Just from these 5 words alone, Ji Tianxing could tell that a non-primordial spirit supreme expert would definitely not have such an aura. He gently flipped open the cover and saw 2 rows of small golden words engraved on the title page. The mountain is high and I am the peak. Upon encountering the heavenly tribulation, the path becomes void. Ascending the heavens through the 9 transformations of life and death, transcending mortality and becoming a heavenly dragon. Ji Tianxing stared fixedly at these 4 lines, great waves surging in his heart as intense shock flashed in his eyes. even though it was just a simple 28 words. These words contained the life experiences of the Eastern Mountain Residence's owner, as well as his domineering aura that looked down upon the world, as well as his unfathomable martial attainment. The mountain is high and I am the peak. This clearly meant that the owner of the Eastern Mountain Residence had reached the peak of the primordial spirit realm and stood at the peak of this continent, looking down upon all life under the heavens. Upon encountering the heavenly tribulation, the path becomes void. This described the mysteriousness and terror of the heavenly tribulation. The last two lines clearly said that after overcoming the 9 heavenly tribulations, one would be able to ascend the heavens in 9 steps and reach the realm of transcendence. That unfathomable martial saint realm was like a heavenly dragon soaring through the heavens, even able to traverse the heavens and space. However, Xianxia had some doubts. Had the owner of the Eastern Mountain Residence successfully overcome the 9 transformations of the heavenly tribulation and reached the realm of transcendence? Did the so-called heavenly dragon mean becoming a heavenly dragon, or becoming as powerful as a heavenly dragon? Filled with questions, his gaze left those 28 words and landed at the bottom right of the title page. There was the signature of the owner of the Eastern Mountain Residence, 4 dark golden words. Eastern Mountain Exalt. Xianxia immediately understood when he saw the majestic and flamboyant seal characters. The owner of the Eastern Mountain Residence was known as the Eastern Mountain Exalt. He was definitely a supreme expert at the peak of the primordial spirit realm. As for what had happened to the Eastern Mountain Exalt in the end and whether he had overcome the heavenly tribulation, he would only know after reading the contents of the ancient records. His gaze fell on the pages of the book, carefully and attentively reading it. The pages of the book were made of a special material. They were cold and tough to the touch. Even after 10,000 years, they did not decay. Densely packed dark golden words were written on it, all of which had been inscribed by the Eastern Mountain Exalt using his immense powers, never to be erased. It was only after Xianxia read through them that he understood that this thick ancient tome recorded the Eastern Mountain Exalt's lifetime of cultivation experiences and insights. This matter had begun to be recalled ever since the Eastern Mountain Exalt had established the Eastern Mountain Residence and returned to seclusion. The Eastern Mountain Supreme Being had set up 8 heavenly monitoring divine eyes within the palace, using their great magical power to monitor the 8 directions of the Tianxian land. The 8 heavens supervising divine eyes could observe the movements of the heavenly stars and monitor the people and all living beings in the world. The Eastern Mountain Exalt sat within the Eastern Mountain Residence, watching the stars shift as the sun and moon rose and fell, overlooking the myriad states of the world, the rise and fall of the world, comprehending the great Tao of the heart of the heavens and the earth. In the book of heavenly observation and worldly observation, there were many mysterious celestial phenomena, as well as the ups and downs of the human world. In the 7,200th year of the ancient calendar, on the eastern continent, the cavalry of the devil race swept over with overflowing killing intent. The hundreds of millions of people of the 100 clans of the east were massacred. Thousands of cities and villages were destroyed, and millions of miles of mountains and rivers were dyed red with blood. 100 years later, the first Devil Emperor led his army into the central region, establishing the imperial court of the devil race and occupying half of the Tianxian land. The people of the various clans were frightened by the might of the devil race, not daring to resist, allowing the devil race to bully and slaughter them. In the 8,000th year of the ancient calendar, the central region stabilized. A mysterious force called the Imperial Residence appeared out of nowhere, suppressing the imperial court of the devil race and taking control of the central region. The first Imperial Residence Lord fought a decisive battle with the Devil Emperor above the 9 heavens for half a month. In the end, the Devil Emperor fell with hatred, while the first Imperial Residence Lord mysteriously disappeared. In the 8,900th year of the ancient calendar, on the southern continent, the human race stood in great numbers, with heroes vying for supremacy. The strongest stood proudly at the peak of the human race, commanding all the humans under the heavens, establishing the imperial court of the human race and entering the central region. In the 9500th year of the ancient calendar, a civil war broke out among the demon race on the western continent. Hundreds of demon race leaders killed each other. After 100 years of competition, the heaven-covering demon emperor finally appeared, suppressing all the demon races under the heavens, establishing the imperial court of the demon race and entering the central region. In the 10,000th year of the ancient calendar, a strange phenomenon occurred in the starry sky. The 9 star pearls shone upon the world, causing the galaxy to collapse. Billions of meteors fell, shaking the heavens and earth. Within 100 years, peerless geniuses emerged from the various clans of the continent. The geniuses of various clans rose together and competed under the starry sky. In the 1200th year of the ancient calendar, the various clans of the continent were at their peak. Humans and demons joined forces to fight against the devil race. Hundreds of Supreme Being elite warriors participated in the battle, and thousands of transcendents led the army. In that epic war, the Devil Emperor and the Devil Marshal of the current generation all fell. The devil race suffered a great defeat and had to retreat from the central region to the northern desert. From then on, the imperial court of the devil race existed in name only and became history. In the 15,000th year of the ancient calendar, the dark and chaotic ancient era ended, and the Tianxian land welcomed a new era. With the start of the new calendar, the continent was stable and peaceful. The various clans established their territories and boundaries, coexisting peacefully and flourishing. When Ji Tianxing saw these records, countless scenes uncontrollably appeared in his mind, as if he could see the various scenes of the past. That grand and magnificent era, where geniuses rose and dragons competed, caused his heart to surge and his blood to boil. As for the Eastern Mountain Exalt, he had lived in seclusion here for 8,000 years, seeing all the happenings in the world. He had personally witnessed the rise and fall of the various clans, the end of the ancient era, and the arrival of the new era. However, in this process, he had always looked on coldly from the perspective of a bystander, never taking part in it. Whether it was the devil race sweeping through the world and wantonly slaughtering hundreds of millions of common people, or the various clans rising and vying for supremacy, he was indifferent to all of them. It was as if everything in the mortal world had nothing to do with him. He seemed to have become one with the heavens and earth. He was high up, detached from the world, yet cold and emotionless. Ji Tianxing could not understand what the Eastern Mountain Exalt was thinking and feeling when he was recording the various major events of the world. However, as he continued to read the heaven-viewing records of the world, he gradually discovered that although the Eastern Mountain Exalt was a human, he was a human god who had inherited the bloodline of the ancient gods. Before reaching the primordial spirit realm, this person was already obsessed with pursuing the martial Tao, a martial fanatic who did not care about the affairs of the world. When he reached the primordial spirit realm, he saw through the affairs of the world and became indifferent, severing his 7 emotions and 6 desires in order to pursue the great Tao of the heavens and earth. He had seen the prosperity of the mortal world and the suffering of all living beings, all for the sake of comprehending the great Tao from it, and thus overcoming the 9 cycles heavenly tribulation to reach the godly realm. Ji Tianxing felt a sense of familiarity with the Eastern Mountain Exalt's nature and mentality. Chapter 1022. Tai was also obsessed with martial arts and was cold and heartless. In order to pursue a stronger martial arts realm, he could disregard everything and cut off his 7 emotions and 6 desires. He could even give up on his family, friends, and lovers. Such a mentality and disposition was extremely similar to the Eastern Mountain Exalts. Ji Tianxing closed the scroll and pondered for a moment. He then shook his head helplessly and sighed. 8,000 people have 1,000 faces and 100 thoughts. Everyone has different natures and principles, so the way they do things is naturally different. One day, even if I become a primordial soul exalt and stand at the peak of the continent, it would be impossible for me to be as cold and heartless as the Eastern Mountain Exalt. However, humans had their humanity, while gods had their divinity. The Eastern Mountain Exalt is a human divinity, calling himself a divinity. How could he possibly possess humanity? After pondering for a moment, he continued reading. Within the heavenly observation and world records, there were also many interesting stories recorded, as well as the unique scenes that the Eastern Mountain Exalt had seen with his heaven-supervising divine eye. Ji Tianxing noticed that there was a strange story about the demon race recorded in it. It was said that in the early days of ancient times, there were many gods in the world. At that time, the Tianxian land was still in an uncivilized period and the development of martial arts had yet to reach its peak. However, there were tens of thousands of races on the continent, and there were many deities who preached and taught to all living beings. The tens of thousands of races coexisted peacefully. However, for some unknown reason, one day, the sky suddenly shattered and collapsed. Endless devils descended from the sky and landed on the Tianxian land. These evil and powerful abyss devils had incomparably strong physiques, power attributes that were different from ordinary people, and bloody and cruel methods to increase their strength. Without a doubt, these evil demons that invaded the Tianxian land were the Devil Clan. Under the leadership of the primogenitor heavenly demon god, the demon race slaughtered all living beings and plundered the resources and territories of all races in the world. They also fed on flesh, blood, and souls to strengthen themselves and increase their strength. They were like locusts passing through. Wherever they passed, not even a blade of grass would grow, and all life would be plunged into misery and suffering. The rapid development and growth of the demon race had caused panic among all the races in the world and infuriated countless gods. However, the gods of the various races were no match for the primogenitor heavenly devil god. They went forward to besiege the heavenly devil god, but they were killed by the heavenly devil god instead. They became nourishment for the primogenitor heavenly devil god's strength. Later on, the strongest deities of each race joined forces to besiege the heavenly demon god, and they fought fiercely in the starry sky for half a year. In the end, the heavenly demon god was killed by the gods and disappeared from the world. The gods had also paid a heavy price. They had either perished or disappeared without a trace. The most outstanding goddess of the human race, Goddess Yaoguang, hated the demon race to the core. She didn't hesitate to self-detonate, sacrificing her life and godhead to place a bloodline curse on the demon race. Ever since then, the power of the curse flowed through the blood of the demons, and it could never be removed. When the demons were weak, they could still maintain their normal form. As the demon race grew stronger, they would become uglier and more ferocious. Their bodies would become larger, like demons, like giant beasts. Every full moon night, when the 7 stars competed for glory, the demons would reveal their ugly true forms and suffer the pain and torment of having their hearts bitten by thousands of ants. According to legend, it was an eternal curse from the goddess. The demons would be punished for the heinous crimes they had committed and would repent for all eternity. Of course, these deeds recorded in the ancient books were only ancient myths and legends. The Eastern Mountain Exalt had never experienced the primitive era of the early ancient era, nor had he seen the era where numerous gods existed side by side. These were all legends that he had heard and found interesting, so he recorded them in the Book of Heaven Observation and World Observation. After reading it, Ji Tianxing did not doubt this legend at all, because he knew that the demon race was indeed suffering from some kind of curse and shackle. Not only would they become ugly and ferocious, the growth of their strength would also become slow, and their innate talent would also be limited. Unknowingly, 4 hours had passed. He had already read more than half of the ancient book, and there were only a dozen or so pages left. These dozen or so pages recorded the Eastern Mountain Exalt's cultivation experiences and comprehensions. An interesting matter was recorded within. The Eastern Mountain Exalt had lived in seclusion at this time, and even though he was alone, he did not feel bored. His greatest hobby was to play chess. Although he was playing chess with himself, seemingly for his own amusement, it was actually a game against the heavens. That ancient beast chess game in the public square was a chess piece in his game against the heavens. Game against the heavens? Back then, when the Eastern Mountain Exalt had reached the peak of the primordial spirit realm, he had endured a total of 9 heavenly tribulations in the 8,000 years he had lived here in seclusion. If he wanted to live on and reach the martial saint realm, he would have to successfully overcome the heavenly tribulations and resolve the 9 cycles heavenly tribulation. In that case, he was really fighting against the heavens, fighting against the heavens. No wonder I could not understand that chess game in the public square. After all, I have yet to reach the level of the Eastern Mountain Exalt. Ji Tianxing nodded slightly, sighing emotionally. The Eastern Mountain Exalt had fought against the heavens for several thousand years, and the final result was that he had won against Tian Yitzi. Therefore, the Eastern Mountain Exalt had successfully overcome the 9 cycles heavenly tribulation, transcending mortality and becoming a martial saint, reaching the martial saint realm like a heavenly dragon. After becoming a martial saint, the Eastern Mountain Exalt had left the Eastern Mountain residence, walking out of the Eastern Sea's returning ruins. Ji Tianxing did not know where he had gone, and there were no records in the heavenly observation and world records. However, Ji Tianxing believed that the Eastern Mountain Exalt had most likely left the profound sky continent in search of an even higher cultivation level. Before the Eastern Mountain Exalt had left, he had removed 90% of the formations and traps in the Eastern Mountain residence, leaving behind only some basic formations to maintain this secret realm from being destroyed for 10,000 years. At the same time, the Eastern Mountain Exalt had predicted that a certain fated person would appear in the future, coming down to the Eastern Mountain residence by chance. Therefore, he had recorded his lifetime of cultivation experiences in the heavenly observation and world records, leaving it for the fated person to read. Reading up to here, Ji Tianxing was enlightened, his eyes shining as he muttered to himself, "No wonder I could successfully traverse the heaven ascension stairs and arrive at the peak of the mountain. No wonder I could break through the palace's protective grand formation and open its gates to come here." It turns out that after the Eastern Mountain Exalt had become a martial saint, he had intentionally removed 90% of the formations, intending to leave this cave residence to the fated person. Without a doubt, he was the first fated person to enter the Eastern Mountain residence in 10,000 years. Feeling rather agitated, he hurriedly read the words recorded on the last 10-odd pages. Those were the cultivation experiences and comprehensions of the Eastern Mountain Exalt, from the heavenly origin stage to the soul refinement stage, and then to the primordial spirit stage. Although those experiences and comprehensions were scattered, appearing profound and obscure, leaving one unable to make sense of them. However, Ji Tianxing was talented and intelligent. Having understood the Eastern Mountain Exalt's life experiences, he was able to guess the Eastern Mountain Exalt's mentality and thoughts. He sat in the dusky, ancient study, holding the heavenly observation and world records with both hands, looking extremely engrossed and entranced. Time passed silently. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 10 days passed. For 10 whole days, Ji Tianxing was like an old monk in meditation, not moving in the slightest like a boulder. It was only at noon on the 11th day that he seemed to have awoken from a dream, coming to a realization. Chapter 1023. Ji Tianxing knew very well that the cultivation of the martial Tao was difficult. It was not easy to become an expert. Abundant cultivation resources could produce Yuan Dan stage experts, but not Sky Origin stage experts. To reach the heavenly origin stage, not only did one need abundant cultivation resources, one also needed extraordinary talent and aptitude. And for a heavenly origin stage expert to break through the shackles of mortals and reach the transcendent soul refinement stage, it was incomparably difficult. Not only did one need abundant resources and outstanding talent, one also needed to have a tenacious and indomitable heart, as well as great opportunities and luck. Ji Tianxing had abundant resources and treasures, monstrous talent, and tenacious heart, but he had never been able to obtain any opportunities. Thus, he had remained at the 9th level of the heavenly origin stage for a very long time. Now, he had inadvertently entered the Eastern Mountain residence, understood the Eastern Mountain Exalt's past, and read the heaven-viewing world record. Without a doubt, his opportunity had come. This heaven-viewing records of the world was his great fortune. After 10 days of meditation, Fully focused on comprehending, he had finally comprehended the Eastern Mountain Exalt's transcendent insights, and found a strange way to break through. He immediately closed the heaven-viewing world record, sitting cross-legged in the study, waving his palms to form seals as he began to circulate and cultivate. Swoosh! His entire body surged with multicolored spiritual light, releasing an incomparably powerful aura. His aura rose unceasingly, his strength surging violently, gradually reaching the peak. Within the study, a violent hurricane arose, sweeping up dust and gravel into the sky outside the door. And he sat in the center of the storm, as steady as a rock, his entire body surging with a powerful aura comparable to a second-level soul refinement stage expert. He had already activated his lifetime's worth of cultivation, controlling the golden sword heart in his chest, tempering it to the limit. Time passed quickly. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days passed, and he had completely forgotten himself, forgotten time, forgotten everything around him. He entered the ethereal state of being one with the heavens, his body merged with the heavens and earth, borrowing the power of the heavens and earth in the Eastern Mountain residence to temper his sword heart repeatedly. Very quickly, another 10 days passed. The finger-sized golden sword heart had been tempered to the limit by him, condensing it to the most tenacious and powerful level. Of course, the sword heart had become the size of a toothpick, but its power had doubled. He began to manipulate the heart of the sword. It left his chest and entered his blood vessels, slowly flying towards his mind. This process was extremely slow, and he had to endure the pain of 10,000 swords piercing his heart. The incomparable pain caused his entire body to tremble violently like a sieve. Beads of sweat the size of beans emerged from the 36,000 pores on his body, covering his face and body, wetting his long hair and white robe. It was even to the extent that the blood vessels all over his body were bulging, and his veins were bulging. Even his bones were emitting cracking sounds as if they were about to break. Fortunately, he had already mastered the ultimate sword body, and his physical body was as strong as a soul-grade magic treasure. If it were a normal cultivator in the 9th level of Sky Origin Realm, his physical body would have been destroyed long ago. 3 days later, Xianxia endured 3 days of torment, as if he had walked through hell and experienced death. Fortunately, he was able to move the sword heart into his mind and fuse it with his soul. Originally, before he reached the soul refinement realm, he had never cultivated and strengthened his soul. However, he almost lost his life in order to resist the Fiend Emperor back then. It was Yun Yao who used the Nirvana Divine Crystal to save him. After he obtained the Heaven Mending Pearl, the Nirvana Divine Crystal completely released its power in the sacred white light of the Heaven Mending Pearl, fusing with his soul. Although he had never taken the initiative to cultivate his soul was strengthened by the Nirvana Divine Crystal, comparable to a first-level soul refinement expert. In this half a year, the Heaven Mending Pearl fused with his soul, and also strengthened his soul several times. When the sword heart entered his mind and started fusing with his soul, he undoubtedly had to endure the pain of his soul being torn apart. However, with the Heaven Mending Pearl's protection and help, it reduced the soul-tearing pain to the extreme. Xianxia was able to endure such inhuman pain and torment. Relying on his powerful willpower, he gritted his teeth and persevered. He used a secret art, borrowed the power of the Heaven Mending Pearl, and gradually fused with the sword heart to condense his divine soul. Time passed quickly. Unknowingly, another half a month passed. His sword heart and soul were only half condensed. He was still very far from success. After a month, the sword heart and soul had fused 90%, and he was about to succeed. His true essence and mind had been overused, and he was about to faint. However, he absolutely could not fail. Otherwise, all of his previous efforts would be for naught. He relied on his incomparably tenacious willpower, the Heaven Mending Pearl, and the power of the Kenshin bloodline to stubbornly endure. After a month and a half, he finally succeeded in fusing his sword heart and soul, forming a golden sword-shaped divine soul. Almost all of the soul refinement realm cultivators' souls were balls of white light, about the size of an egg. And his divine soul was so special, it was actually a small golden sword. He called it Sword Soul. At noon on this day, his entire body released a sword light that soared into the sky, bursting with a sword intent that covered the sky. With a loud rumbling sound, the entire study and half of the palace were shattered by the sword intent that soared into the sky, collapsing into ruins. In the dust that covered the sky, Ji Tianxing finished cultivating. He walked out in high spirits and arrived in the air above the palace. He stood in the air, looking down on the world with a calm expression. His entire body was bursting with the domineering aura of a powerhouse that looked down on the world. Without a doubt, he had successfully broken through the shackles of mortals, condensing a sword soul, and reached the first level of the soul refinement realm. From this moment on, he was no longer a mortal, but a transcendent powerhouse. His lifespan had reached 1,000 years. He had become an immortal in the eyes of mortals, immortal and immortal. The only vital point in his body was his divine soul. Even if his body was destroyed into powder, as long as his divine soul was not destroyed, he would not die. His strength had also increased by 5 times, and he had stepped into a whole new level and domain. The current him was only a first-level soul refinement realm expert. But if he met a third-level soul refinement realm expert, he could easily defeat them. Even if it was a fourth-level soul refinement realm expert, he could fight to a draw and even have a chance of winning. Ji Tianxing's mind stirred, and he summoned the sword soul in his sea of consciousness. The toothpick-sized golden sword soul hovered quietly in his palm, shimmering with a resplendent golden light and bursting with a sword intent that seemed to be able to rip the world apart. He stared at the sword spirit silently as a gratified smile appeared in his eyes. He muttered to himself, "I originally thought that I would need to find the boundless stone and strengthen the broken sword before I could borrow the power of the divine sword to break through to the spirit refining realm. To think that the heavens would look after me and allow me to obtain such an opportunity to advance to the soul refinement realm in advance. Not only is the Eastern Mountain Exalt's heaven viewing record of the world an unparalleled book that records the events of the past and present, it is also a secret manual that leads to the primordial spirit realm. It is worthy of being treasured and comprehended by me throughout my life." Chapter 1024. Ji Tianxing was completely satisfied. Although his trip to the East Sea's returning ruins this time had been extremely dangerous, he had also reaped great rewards. Not only had he obtained over 10 incomparably precious mineral veins, he had even found the boundless stone. And the most precious thing was that he had inadvertently entered Eastern Mountain residence and obtained the heaven-viewing world reading record. The dusty history and ancient secrets were revealed in this ancient book. The cultivation experiences and comprehensions of an essence spirit supreme were presented in this ancient book. To Ji Tianxing, this was absolutely a priceless treasure. He solemnly kept the heaven-viewing world reading record, storing it in his spatial ring. As long as he had the time in the future, he would definitely read this ancient book repeatedly. However, that was a matter for the future. He stood in the air above Eastern Mountain residence, releasing formless spiritual power that spread out in all directions, enveloping the entire mountain peak. Unfortunately, although Eastern Mountain residence was majestic, it was built extremely simply and plain. There was only a palace on the mountain peak, with no other residences or buildings. Ji Tianxing thought that the Eastern Mountain Exalt was probably already standing at the peak of the mortal realm, having reached the realm of returning to simplicity and fighting against the heavens. There was no need for those gaudy buildings to decorate his cave abode. Moreover, he had searched the entire mountain peak with his spiritual power, yet did not find any other valuable treasures. There were no divine weapons or martial arts legacies. When the Eastern Mountain Exalt had left Eastern Mountain residence, he had only left behind a study full of ancient books. 10,000 years had passed, and those ancient books had all turned to dust, with only the heaven-viewing world reading record remaining till now. Ji Tianxing felt a little regretful as he could only take down the golden bricks on the floor of the palace and the jade screens embedded in the walls, keeping them in his spatial ring. The golden bricks on the floor were not ordinary gold, but refined from stellar gold sand. Such stellar gold sand bricks were extremely rare in the current world, and would usually only appear in broken fragments, yet they could also be sold for astonishing prices. Ji Tianxing had dug up over 400 pieces, which could be sold for 3 to 500 million spirit stones at the very least. As for the jade screens embedded in the walls, they were also not ordinary spirit jades, but spirit-gathering jade. Those were precious gems that soul refinement realm cultivators yearned for even in their dreams. They had the miraculous effect of condensing one's mind and tempering one's soul. Most of the spirit-congealing jades that had appeared in the Middle State continent were palm-sized and were worth 20 to 30 million spirit stones. Moreover, they were priceless. Ji Tianxing, on the other hand, directly moved 4 jade screens, which were as big as 4 walls. He could not estimate how much these 4 huge pieces of spirit-condensing jades could be sold for. Of course, he had no intention of selling it. Such an excellent treasure naturally had to be made into a praying mat or a throne for him to use during cultivation. After confirming that there were no more treasures in the Eastern Mountain residence, Ji Tianxing turned to leave. Just as he was about to fly down the mountain, he noticed a sudden change in heaven and earth. The clear sky was shattering, the towering mountains were crumbling, and the remaining half of the palace was rapidly collapsing into ruins. The entire Eastern Mountain residence was collapsing at a speed visible to the naked eye. It was falling apart and shattering. Ji Tianxing stood in the sky, frowning as he looked at all of this. His expression became somewhat solemn. This cave-dwelling secret realm is actually about to be destroyed. Has the energy maintaining the secret realm been exhausted? Or is it a formation left behind by the Eastern Mountain Exalt that wants to destroy this secret realm? He was filled with doubts, yet no one could answer him. Just at this moment, he saw a gate condensed from white light appear in the sky before him. The gate of white light that was over 10 feet tall was like a spatial teleportation gate, flickering with a dazzling brilliance. Ji Tianxing looked at the collapsing sky and earth, watching as the cave-dwelling secret realm was rapidly collapsing. Without hesitation, he flew towards that teleportation gate. Whoosh! When he flew to the side of the teleportation gate, he stopped and turned his head to look behind him. He took a final look at the Eastern Mountain residence that was about to dissipate, bowing with a sincere expression as he murmured softly, "Eastern Mountain Exalt, although I cannot agree with your way of doing things and your way of thinking, I still have to thank you for giving me such a great opportunity in these 10,000 years." With that, he turned and stepped into the spatial teleportation gate. The next moment, his figure was swallowed up by the white light, vanishing. Not long after, the Eastern Mountain residence completely collapsed, the entire cave-dwelling secret realm dissipating. Whoosh! Ji Tianxing only saw a white light flash before his eyes as he left the Eastern Mountain residence secret realm, returning to the dark, cold underground. He appeared above the silver mineral vein, standing at the edge of that black hole. 5 steps away from him, on the other side of the black hole, the Golden Mountain King was holding his dark golden warhammer with both hands, looking at the black hole with anxiety and anticipation, muttering something. Young Master Ji, why haven't you come out yet? I can't contact you at all, and I don't know where you've gone or what kind of danger you've encountered. Sai, this is too worrying. If something happens to you, how can I? The Golden Mountain King was only halfway through his words when he saw a blur before his eyes as a white-robed youth appeared out of thin air. He was instantly stunned, staring at the white-robed youth with wide eyes, all of his worry and anxiety instantly vanishing into nothingness. Young Master Ji, you've actually... Oh no, you've finally come back. The Golden Mountain King came back to his senses. His eyes lit up with joy and excitement. He threw away his dark golden warhammer, took 2 steps forward excitedly, and stretched out his arms to hug Ji Tianxing's legs. Ji Tianxing saw his excited reaction and smiled with relief. He bent over and patted his shoulder, comforting him. Golden Mountain King, I've made you worry. When I went in, I was wondering why you didn't follow me. It seems that there must be something wrong with the space tunnel, so you didn't come in, right? The Golden Mountain King nodded and hurriedly explained, yes. Young Master Ji, after you entered the space vortex, I immediately followed you. However, no one expected that the space vortex would suddenly disappear. I had no choice but to stay here and wait for you to come out. I don't know where you've been or if you've encountered any danger, so I've been very worried about you these past few days. These past few days? Ji Tianxing's expression suddenly changed, and he frowned in confusion. That's strange, I've been in there for 2 months. The Golden Mountain King was also puzzled, and he asked, Young Master Ji, since you went in, today is the 4th day. Don't you remember? Ji Tianxing saw that the Golden Mountain King's expression was sincere, and he did not seem to be lying, so he immediately understood. Oh, I understand now. The Eastern Mountain Residence is an alternate space, where the flow of time is different from the outside world. 2 months in the Mystery Land is actually only 4 days in the outside world. He felt lucky that the Eastern Mountain Residence was so miraculous that it saved him 2 months of time. At this moment, the Golden Mountain King suddenly noticed the change in his strength and temperament, and his eyes widened in shock. Chapter 1025. The Jinshan King was dumbfounded. He stared at Ji Tianxing, dumbfounded. It was as if he was dreaming. He couldn't believe it. He had been stuck at the 9th level of the Sky Origin stage for 8 years before he finally reached the Soul Refining stage. Ji Tianxing was still in the Sky Origin stage 4 days ago. Now, he had reached the Soul Refining stage after entering the Mystery Realm. How could the Jinshan King not be shocked? He used to be the most powerful man and the most talented man in the Earth Spirit clan. But only now did he realize that compared to Ji Tianxing, he was simply beaten to the point where not even dregs were left. Seeing his reaction, Ji Tianxing patted his shoulder and comforted him with a smile. Jinshan King, don't be so surprised. In fact, the time flow in the Mystery Realm is different from the outside world. Only 4 days have passed in the outside world, but I have been in there for 2 months. 2 months? The Jinshan King's eyes widened in shock. You've reached the Soul Refining Realm in just 2 months. You're a rare genius. He exclaimed. All right, young Master Ji, what is the Mystery Realm in there? Can you tell me more about it? Ji Tianxing looked at him and pointed at the rock layer not far away. He said, I will tell you more about the Mystery Realm when we have time. Right now, we need to figure out how to deal with the 4 red flame pterosaurs. Also, we need to find a way to move the star vein away. The Jinshan King turned around and looked at the rock layer. He saw the 4 red flame pterosaurs on the other side of the rock layer. They were roaring and emitting strong battle intent. They seemed to have realized that the mysterious power that scared them had disappeared. Therefore, they started to make strange sounds to summon the other pterosaurs on the island. They were ready to attack Ji Tianxing and the Jinshan King together. Seeing this, the Jinshan King clenched his warhammer with both hands, his body surging with battle intent. He said in a deep voice, Humph! This group of reckless pterosaurs was really courting their own deaths. Young Master Ji, it just so happens that you've just broken through to the Soul Refining Realm. Why don't you use these winged dragons to practice? Hee, that's exactly what I was thinking. Ji Tianxing grinned, revealing a playful sneer. Jinshan King, you stay here and study how to excavate this star vein. I'll go play with those pterosaurs. The Jinshan King shook his head and said, No, no, no. This won't do. Young Master Ji, this humble prince is definitely not someone who is afraid of death. How can I let you face those winged dragons alone? This little king wants to fight alongside you and eliminate those pterosaurs. Ji Tianxing waved his hand. His tone was calm, but it contained an unquestionable meaning. Jinshan King, there's no need to argue. You stay here and excavate the mineral veins as soon as possible. After saying that, his body flashed with a dark yellow light, and he passed through the 1,000-meter-thick rock layer, flying toward the 4 red flame pterosaurs. The Jinshan King was stunned for a moment. He gripped his dark golden warhammer tightly, wanting to follow and fight alongside Ji Tianxing. However, he could not disobey Ji Tianxing's words. After hesitating for a moment, he suppressed his worries and carried his war hammer into the mineral veins, thinking about how to excavate the mineral veins. Swoosh! Ji Tianxing's sudden attack startled the 4 red flame pterosaurs. They all retreated to keep a distance from Ji Tianxing. However, when they thought that Ji Tianxing was going to attack, Ji Tianxing quickly left and flew toward the surface. They immediately thought that Ji Tianxing was going to run away. They roared angrily and chased after him. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Ji Tianxing and the 4 red flame pterosaurs turned into 5 dazzling lights and quickly passed through the thousands of meters underground. In just 10 breaths' time, they emerged from the ground and flew into the sky above the island. It was afternoon now. The sky was covered by thin clouds, and the dim sunlight could be faintly seen. Ji Tianxing flew into the sky and stood still. He stretched out his right hand. A light flashed in his palm, and a dark and cold broken sword appeared. He held the broken sword in his hand and looked down at the ground expressionlessly. He thought to himself, now that I've reached the soul refining stage, I can finally cultivate the sword's soul Dao and my self-created sword's soul battle technique. When the burial of heaven wakes up, I'll let it teach me the sword's soul art. By then, my combat strength will definitely increase by several times. At this moment, the 4 red flame pterosaurs emerged from the ground and flew into the sky. They spread out and surrounded him. The 4 red flame pterosaurs let out earth-shattering roars. Their eyes were filled with anger and killing intent. They flapped their wide wings and stirred up tornadoes. Their bodies were surging with rising flames. Within a 10-mile radius, the temperature suddenly rose. The air was filled with flames. Ji Tianxing was not afraid. The true essence in his body surged and surged. His aura was extraordinary. He growled with killing intent. This is my first battle after breaking through to the soul refining stage. It's your honor to be able to die under my divine sword. As soon as he finished speaking, he brazenly swung his sword, exploding with incomparably vigorous energy. He fiercely slashed out a sword light that could split the heavens and earth. Metal Emperor Slash. The 100-meter-long golden sword light slashed toward one of the red flame pterosaurs with an indestructible power. On the surface, this sword light looked no different from the Metal Emperor Slash he used 4 days ago. But in reality, its power had increased by about 5 times. Ji Tianxing, who had broken through to the soul refining stage, had been reborn. He was extraordinary. The speed of this Metal Emperor Slash was extremely fast. The red flame pterosaur had no time to dodge and was hit by the sword light. Bam! With a dull thud, the scarlet flame pterosaur was sliced in half by the giant sword. Blood and flesh splattered everywhere. A 3rd-level soul refining stage red flame pterosaur was cut in half by Ji Tianxing. Moreover, he had not used his full strength. He had only used 80% of his power. Such a terrifying power stunned the other 3 red flame pterosaurs. Their eyes were filled with fear. Among the pieces of flesh flying in the air, there was a fist-sized dark red crystal and a ball of white light. The ball of white light was the red flame pterosaur's soul crystal. It flew away in fear, trying to escape from this place. The dark red crystal that fell from the sky was the demon core that it had condensed its entire life's worth of power. Ji Tianxing waved his hand and caught the pure demon core in his hand. He kept it in his interspatial ring. He waved his sword again and slashed the red flame pterosaur's soul crystal into pieces. Thus, the red flame pterosaur died just like that. The other 3 red flame pterosaurs finally regained their senses. They roared angrily and charged toward him. They spat out torrential flames and released more than 10 destructive attacks. They attacked Ji Tianxing with all their might. Chapter 1026. The 3 scarlet flaming pterosaurs attacked Ji Tianxing with all their might. They used all kinds of attacks, releasing flames and light blades that covered the sky and covered the earth, drowning Ji Tianxing's figure. Rumble! Loud noises continued to erupt and resounded throughout the entire island. The forest and land within a radius of dozens of miles were burned into scorched earth, raising dust into the sky. The earth-shattering battle caused the entire island to tremble and shake. Numerous cracks appeared on the ground, and monstrous waves surged around the island. Ji Tianxing shuttled through the sea of fire, withstanding the attacks of all kinds of flowing light blades, but he was still safe and sound. He relied on his extremely powerful sword body and spiritual energy to protect himself, blocking all the attacks. And the ultimate killing move he released with all his strength was difficult for the 3 scarlet flaming pterosaurs to block. White Tiger's Sacred Sword. With a wave of the broken sword, 100-meter-long giant sword wrapped in a mountain-like white tiger phantom slashed at one of the scarlet flaming pterosaurs. Bang! The scarlet flaming pterosaur was split in half on the spot. Its head was separated from its body, and it fell from the sky like a rain of blood. The dark red monster core was still in the corpse, but its soul crystal was flashing with white light. It panicked and fled into the depths of the island. Ji Tianxing chased after it and slashed out a shocking sword light again. This sword light contained the power of the spirit. When it hit the soul crystal, it shattered into pieces. A scarlet flaming pterosaur at the 3rd level of the soul refinement realm had its body destroyed and spiritual energy destroyed in one strike. It was completely dead. The other 2 scarlet flaming pterosaurs rushed over and attacked him fiercely, sending him flying. But he was not injured even after flying 1,000 meters away. He swung his sword at another scarlet flaming pterosaur. Vermilion Bird's Sacred Sword. The broken sword slashed out 100-meter-long giant sword light, carrying a huge vermilion bird phantom, and hit another scarlet flaming pterosaur. Boom! With a loud bang, the scarlet flaming pterosaur was also split in half. 2 huge pieces of its body fell from the sky and crashed onto the ground. The scarlet flame pterosaur had learned to be smart. Its soul crystal didn't fly away from the sky. Instead, it burrowed into the ground, trying to escape through the ground. However, this couldn't escape Ji Tianxing's eyes. He swung his sword and slashed out a sword ray. It slashed into the ground, creating a wide gully and shattering the soul crystal into pieces. The second scarlet flame pterosaur was also killed by Ji Tianxing. The last remaining scarlet flame pterosaur had reached the 4th level of the soul refining realm and was the strongest leader on this island. However, it had witnessed several of its companions being killed one after another. It had long been scared out of its wits by Ji Tianxing's invincible might. Even though its strength was much higher than Ji Tianxing's, it still lost its fighting spirit and quickly turned around to flee. Ji Tianxing chased after him without hesitation. He brandished the broken sword with all his might and performed 2 moves. Azure Dragon's Sacred Sword. Black Tortoise Sacred Sword. These 2 moves were powerful sword techniques that he had comprehended and learned from Kenshin's inheritance. When he was in the Heaven Origin realm, he couldn't fully comprehend these 2 sword techniques, so he had never used them. However, after he reached the soul refining realm, his understanding of the sword Dao had deepened. Therefore, he was able to use these 2 moves naturally. The giant sword that was 100 meters long was like an azure dragon flashing with azure light. It descended from the sky and blasted towards the scarlet flame pterosaur. Bang! With a deafening sound, the scarlet flame pterosaur was blasted away by the giant sword. It crashed onto the ground covered in blood. It was heavily injured. Its back was badly mangled and bleeding. It was still desperately flapping its broken wings, trying to fly back to the sky. However, a giant black sword that was wrapped in the shadow of a black tortoise slashed down. Boom! With a deafening sound, the giant shadow of a black tortoise slammed into the scarlet flame pterosaur. The scarlet flame pterosaur's body collapsed and exploded into pieces of flesh. The scarlet flame pterosaur's body was destroyed. The only thing left was its soul crystal. It still wanted to escape underground. Ji Tianxing brandished the broken sword again. He activated his majestic spiritual energy and slashed out fiercely. Bang! The scarlet flame pterosaur's soul crystal exploded into dozens of white pieces and scattered on the ground. By now, all 4 scarlet flame pterosaurs had been killed. From Ji Tianxing's attack to the death of all 4 scarlet flame pterosaurs, it had been less than 100 breaths. Moreover, he had killed all 4 scarlet flame pterosaurs and was still unharmed. Even he himself found it unbelievable that he was so powerful. 4 days ago, the Golden Mountain King and I worked together, but we were still defeated by a few scarlet flame pterosaurs. But now, I can easily kill them all with my own strength. I didn't expect that the gap between the first level of the soul refining realm and the 9th level of the sky origin stage could be so huge. The soul refining realm is indeed an extraordinary realm of martial arts. It has all kinds of unimaginable abilities. It is beyond the imagination of mortals. He looked at the sky in front of him and saw 3 smaller scarlet flame pterosaurs on the other side of the island. They were flying away in a panic. Apparently, the 3 scarlet flame pterosaurs were scared out of their wits. They didn't dare to stay on the island and could only run away. Ji Tianxing didn't chase after the 3 scarlet flame pterosaurs. He put away the broken sword and landed on the ground. He found 3 more monster cores and dozens of white pieces of soul crystal from the corpses of the scarlet flame pterosaurs. There were 4 monster cores in total. All of them contained pure and powerful energy. They were like 4 burning fireballs. The dozens of pieces of soul crystal were condensed from the souls of the 4 scarlet flame pterosaurs. They contained immense soul energy. 4 burial of heaven, the monster cores and soul crystals of soul refining realm demon beasts were supplements that could replenish its energy. A long time ago, when Ji Tianxing was traveling in the buried star sea, he had hunted down half-step soul refining realm demon beasts and used their monster cores and soul crystals to help burial of heaven recover its energy. Now that he was in the eastern sea and had reached the soul refining realm, he could easily kill soul refining realm demon beasts. Of course, he wouldn't let go of these monster cores and soul crystals. Whoosh! He activated the mysterious black hole in the center of his right palm and devoured the 4 monster cores and dozens of pieces of soul crystal to help burial of heaven recover its energy. The scarlet flame pterosaurs on the island were either dead or had escaped. The island was now completely safe. Ji Tianxing returned to the depth of 5,000 meters and arrived at the star mineral vein. The Golden Mountain King had already thought of a way to excavate the star vein. He was carrying the dark golden hammer and working hard to excavate the vein. When he saw that Ji Tianxing had returned safely, he was both happy and surprised. He asked, "Young Master Ji, I heard that you were fighting so fiercely just now. How did it end so quickly? Did you chase away all the scarlet flame pterosaurs?" Ji Tianxing nodded and said calmly, "I killed the 4 scarlet flame pterosaurs. There were still 3 young scarlet flame pterosaurs on the island. They all ran away in fear." What? The Golden Mountain King's eyes immediately widened. He exclaimed in disbelief, "Young Master Ji, you killed all 4 scarlet flame pterosaurs in just 100 breaths." Chapter 1027. Ever since the Jinshan King met Ji Tianxing, he would be shocked every few days. He had been shocked so many times that he was starting to get numb to it. By now, he had witnessed Ji Tianxing create too many miracles with his own eyes. No matter what earth-shattering things Ji Tianxing did, he would not be too shocked. After a while, he calmed down and joined forces with Ji Tianxing to excavate the star lode. Although the star lode was more than 10 miles long, it was as huge as a mountain range. But both of them were powerhouses in the soul refining realm, and the Jinshan King was a great master in mining. Ji Tianxing opened the exit of the Sword World and asked the Jinshan King to gather hundreds of Earth Spirit craftsmen. The 2 of them led hundreds of Earth Spirit craftsmen. In just 6 hours, they had excavated the entire star lode and stored it in the Sword World. Ji Tianxing did not need to worry about what happened next. He left the depths of the underground and returned to the top of the island. He was about to leave this place. The Jinshan King stayed in the Sword World and led the hundreds of Earth Spirit craftsmen to bury the star lode in the mountains. The star lode would continue to grow and produce more star lode in the future. Ji Tianxing stood in the sky and looked down at the entire island. He took a deep look at the devastated and ruined island and was about to turn and leave. However, he had just flown a few hundred miles away from the island. In the sky behind him to the left, a huge black aura suddenly appeared, and a tall and burly figure flew over. Swoosh! In just a few breaths, the black figure caught up with Ji Tianxing and blocked his way. The black figure stood in the air 1,000 meters in front of him and looked at him coldly. His whole body was emitting a piercing killing intent. I have said that I will kill you even if I have to chase you to the end of the world. The black figure grinned and shouted in a cold voice. Only then did Ji Tianxing see clearly that the black shadow was a tall and sturdy man with 2 heads. He was over 3 meters tall. This person had long grayish-white hair and a black dragon horn on his forehead. There were many warts on his temples and a long and narrow scar on the right side of his head. Without a doubt, this burly man with a cold aura was the ancient mutated beast, Illumination Dragon. Ji Tianxing was stunned for a moment, then immediately reacted, and the corner of his mouth hooked up into a mocking sneer. Zhu Long, I really didn't expect that you were so eager to die that you actually chased me all the way here. I wanted to find you for revenge, but I didn't expect you to deliver yourself to my doorstep. You've come at the right time. Today we'll settle our grudges here. I'll skin you alive, pull out your tendons, and grind your bones to dust. As he spoke, Ji Tianxing's body also surged with a biting cold killing intent. A black light flashed in his right palm, and a broken black sword appeared. Illumination Dragon looked greedily at the broken sword of burial of heaven in his hand, then sized him up and immediately frowned. I didn't expect you to break through your shackles and reach the soul refinement realm after not seeing you for a few days. No wonder you're so arrogant. However, this king will soon let you know that even though you've broken through to the soul refinement realm, you're still as weak as a dog in front of this king. A few days ago, this king was able to beat you until you fled like a stray dog. Today, this king won't even let you have the chance to escape. You'll definitely die. Your innate bloodline and that magic dagger in your hand will also be in this king's pocket. Hearing his words, Ji Tianxing immediately understood. No wonder Illumination Dragon was unwilling to give up after chasing him for tens of thousands of miles. Hee, you want to steal my innate bloodline and divine sword? What a coincidence. I wanted to strip you of your dragon tendons, dragon bones, dragon blood, and dragon crystal. Cut the crap, Illumination Dragon, prepare to die. Ji Tianxing gave a low shout, his body bursting with fighting intent as he brazenly brandished his sword towards Illumination Dragon. White Tiger's sacred sword. He held the broken sword with both hands and activated all his strength, brazenly slashing out 100-meter-long giant sword beam. White light lingered around the sword beam, condensing into the phantom of a white tiger. It was as large as a mountain, its claws and teeth extended, carrying with it a monstrous murderous aura. Illumination Dragon's eyes flashed coldly as he angrily scolded, "Little worm, do you really think you're strong just because you've broken through to the soul refinement realm? You actually dare to take the initiative to attack this king." As he spoke, he waved his palms, releasing a monstrous black light that condensed into 2 mountain-like claws, brazenly slapping towards the giant sword beam. Heaven's seizing claw. Kaboom! The 2 shocking giant claws ruthlessly slammed into the white tiger's sacred sword, shattering the white tiger phantom on the spot with an earth-shattering sound. The heaven's seizing claw also shattered, turning into black fragments that scattered across the sky. However, that giant sword beam did not lose its power, and with a bang, it struck Illumination Dragon. With a muffled sound, Illumination Dragon was sent flying by the giant sword, only stopping 1,000 meters away. He lowered his head to look at his chest, and saw that the giant sword had pierced a bowl-sized bloody hole between his chest and abdomen, with black blood oozing out. The intense pain caused him to frown fiercely, the veins all over his body bulging, surging with rage. "Little bastard! How dare you injure this king? You're not bad. After breaking through to the soul refinement realm, you're actually qualified to be this king's opponent. Very good. This king will use the cruelest and most vicious method to blast you into pieces and crush you into powder. Illumination Dragon roared furiously, a shocking black light gushing out of his body, and his figure flashed, revealing his true form. With an earth-shattering dragon roar, he turned into a pitch-black dragon that was 1,000 meters long with 2 heads. Little bastard, go to hell. Illumination Dragon coiled high in the sky, looking down at Ji Tianxing, and let out a furious roar. 9 Flames God-slaying sword. He waved his giant dragon claws, opened his huge dragon mouth, and released 18 giant flaming swords of different colors, blasting towards Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing had already seen the power of this secret technique, so of course, he did not dare to let his guard down. He immediately took out his magic treasure, the green light treasure tree, and released a vast amount of magic power, activating the power of the green light treasure tree. Swoosh! The 1-foot-tall green light treasure tree flashed with a dazzling green light and immediately became a 1,000-meter-tall ancient tree. The ancient tree had billions of green branches, gushing with rich green light, protecting Ji Tianxing. Bam bam bam! The 18 giant flaming swords all hit the green light treasure tree, exploding with the power of 9 different attributes. The earth-shattering sound reverberated over the sea for a long time, reverberating fiercely in the air for a long time. Brilliant 5-colored flames shot into the sky, enveloping an area of 10 miles, turning the area into a 5-colored sea of fire. The dark sky for dozens of miles was lit up by the soaring flames. The giant green light treasure tree was also engulfed by the flames, and could not be seen at all. It was obvious that Illumination Dragon was truly enraged and had used all his strength. You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.